Chapter 2148. Scram. The heaven-devouring great emperor snapped. If this bastard hadn't emphasized the fact that he had been thrown into a cesspool, he wouldn't have cared. But now that the heaven-devouring great emperor's name had spread, the consequences would be unimaginable. The heaven-devouring great emperor felt that he would be laughed at to death. "Senior, I'll give you 1 second to consider." Hee hee. Chu Yang laughed sinisterly. "Bastard." The heaven-devouring great emperor roared again. "You little brat, when I catch you, I'll make sure to soak you properly." TSK. Chu Yang retorted with disdain. "Heaven-devouring great emperor, when will you be able to come out from that corner of the world? Aren't you waiting for me to save you? You should be more polite with your words. You little bastard." The heaven-devouring great emperor retorted. "There aren't many bastards like me." Chu Yang raised his head proudly. "Perhaps, only a little bastard like me can save you from the abyss of suffering. Therefore, this marshal needs to remind you to quickly suck up to this bastard." As he spoke, he suddenly became excited and almost drooled. To be sucked up to by a great emperor, how embarrassing would that be? No one would believe me if I say it out loud. It would definitely be a great achievement in my life. TSK, that old thing. Then, he roared at the heaven-devouring great emperor. "Bastard, you heaven-devouring great emperor, hurry up and suck up to this marshal. The time for you and me to make history has arrived. How can you miss it? Later generations will definitely record this in the annals of history. The great emperor of the dung pit had foresight and was not afraid of others' words. He flattered Emperor Chu madly and did not hesitate to flatter him. Everyone laughed at him, but later on, he regretted his actions and regretted missing the opportunity to flatter Emperor Chu madly. The heaven-devouring great emperor's illusory figure instantly solidified. His face was as black as ink, and his facial features could not be seen clearly. He was so angry that the roots of his teeth itched. His eyes were like 2 hungry tigers. When he looked over, 2 hungry tigers would pounce on Chu Yang and swallow him whole. However, the heaven-devouring great sovereign could do nothing about it. He roared, "You're pissing me off." At first, Gongsun Qing even had the urge to beat Chu Yang to death. But later, he realized that his ancestor seemed to get along well with this little bastard. However, only Chu Yang could think of something like having a great emperor flatter him. Therefore, Gongsun Qing was completely convinced by Chu Yang. Saints, even if they were saints, were fearful in front of the great emperor. How could they dare to be so impudent? The zither tune saint's son also rolled his eyes. He knew his little brother's character all too well. "Stop, stop, stop." Chu Yang rolled up his sleeves and roared, "Dung pit great emperor, what are you trying to do? You actually dare to refuse to cooperate with this matter of infinite glory? Do you want to leave behind an infamy in the annals of history for your stupidity? Do you want people to say that you have dog eyes but can't recognize such a great character like the Emperor of Chu? If you don't know how to curry favor with him, then the final verdict will be that you are an idiot who will sleep in a cesspool. Shut up, you bastard. Impudent." Chu Yang roared, "Dung pit great emperor, you're looking down on me. What kind of person am I? I can drink the medicinal wine brewed by the 4 emperors, the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. I can even make fun of giants who treat great emperors like ants. This is unprecedented. Where did you get the guts to be so impudent in front of me?" Although what he said was true, and it was all about his experience in the strange world, it was actually nonsense. Who would believe that? However, the words that came out of nowhere from the dung pit great emperor shocked him. "Little bastard, you've been to that place?" The dung pit great emperor said with disbelief. "I'm just bluffing." Chu Yang did not admit it. Chapter 2149. Big Secret. Saint Child Qinyin, Gongsun Qing, and the rest of the Gongsun family were shocked. They knew that what their old ancestor was going to tell Chu Yang was definitely a big secret. As soon as they left, Chu Yang couldn't help but curse, "Dung pit emperor, are you stupid? I've been hiding it well. Now that you're here, aren't they going to believe it? Even if they know, who would believe it? Would they only think that they're crazy? Don't find excuses. Stupid is stupid. Chu Yang pointed at the illusory figure and scolded, "You're just an idiot. It's not wrong to call you the Dung Pit Emperor. I'm not afraid of godlike opponents, but I'm afraid of pig-like teammates like you." This time, the heaven-devouring great emperor ignored Chu Yang's nonsense and said, "Little bastard, have you really been to that place?" he asked solemnly. Even now, he still couldn't believe it. Nonsense. Chu Yang still had the world cauldron that he had stolen from that strange world. Thinking about that strange world, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "What kind of place is that?" "I went there for a walk, and I felt a chill down my spine." "A chill down your spine? Why are you still asking?" The heaven-devouring great emperor warned, "Don't spout nonsense. Otherwise, you won't even know when you'll die." "Congratulations." Chu Yang cupped his fists and said, "Congratulations on killing your own descendant. I guarantee that you won't have any descendants." Hiss. The huge snake on the green-black jade pendant suddenly rushed out and opened its mouth to swallow Huang Xiaolong. The heaven-devouring great emperor was furious. He was so shocked that he didn't think it through and did something stupid. Now that Chu Yang was holding on to him, he couldn't get out of this embarrassing situation and attacked in anger. Wang, Wang, Wang. The five hells mother-child heavenly demon cauldron stood in front of Chu Yang and protected him. The huge snake bit on the cauldron and its teeth fell out. "Emperor weapon!" the heaven-devouring great monarch exclaimed in shock. Even though they have yet to fully recover from the damage, there are still traces of the Tao inscriptions of an emperor and a sovereign. How could he not be shocked? The great emperors were from the heavenly spirit world, and the sovereigns were from the myriad gods world. The Tao patterns of the two were like yin and yang, engraved on the demonic bell. Chu Yang was also very surprised. The great emperor was indeed amazing. Even though they were separated by such a long time and space, the old man could still clearly sense the devil bell in the mother cauldron. "Old geezer, you're amazing." He couldn't help but give the heaven-devouring great emperor a thumbs up. Nonsense. As expected of the Dung Pit Emperor, before the heaven-devouring great sovereign could feel proud of himself, the words "great sovereign shit pit" were thrown right in his face, causing him to spurt blood. In the end, he was thoroughly taught a lesson. He answered what he had to answer, explained what he had to explain, and directly left. Chu Yang also learned a lot of things he wanted to know. For example, there was no problem with the silver wolf condensing the Dharma idol of its ancestor. Although the celestial lord had died many years ago, his descendants were another way for him to survive in the world. Therefore, if the silver wolf used its own blood essence to condense the Dharma idol of the celestial lord, it would be very shocking. If the blood essence was used in conjunction with the Dharma idol and the imprint of the celestial lord in heaven and earth, as long as there was enough support, it would be like the celestial lord reappearing for a short time. That's enough. Chapter 2150. Second brother, my big brother left something in the jade pendant. You should cherish it. If you behave like Gong Sun Long, my big brother will probably beat you to death, Chu Yang said. The zither melody Holy Sun could only smile bitterly. He also had the urge to beat up Chu Yang. Also, my big brother also said that. Chu Yang said to everyone from the Gong Sun family, "It was Gong Sun Long who threw my big brother into the cesspool. He must be killed." Before anyone from the Gong Sun family could question him, he continued, "Don't suspect that I'm faking an imperial edict. I'm still wondering if my big brother was telling the truth. Why does he want to kill Gong Sun Long? Goodbye, everyone." Chu Yang didn't give Gong Sun Qing and the zither melody Holy Sun a chance to speak. He left with a swoosh, leaving everyone looking at each other. Thankfully, the zither melody Holy Sun didn't feel any guilt for killing Gong Sun Long. The zither melody Holy Sun and the others didn't have much peace. Soon, they received news that Chu Yang had brought his junior brother and summoned the Star Monarch to suppress the Star Battle Academy. The Academy Master of the Star Battle Academy was dead. The leader of the Star Battle Academy was dead. Chu Yang dealt with the Star Battle Academy in a similar way to the Gongsun family, but his methods were more ruthless. According to the news, the Star Monarch seemed to have been resurrected for a short period of time. After learning that almost all of his descendants had been killed, he went on a killing spree, causing the entire Star Battle Academy to be almost destroyed. In the end, the Star Battle Academy only had one saint left. The rest of the higher-ups were all dead, but the students of the Star Battle Academy were barely affected. The only descendant of the Star Monarch became the Academy Master. Chu Yang's junior brother, the Zither Melody Holy Son, naturally knew that it was the Silver Wolf. He was very happy for the Silver Wolf, so he wasn't surprised by this outcome. The Gongsun family members weren't surprised either. Chu Yang knew that their ancestor was still alive, but he still wanted their ancestor, an emperor, to flatter him. If he could do something like this, then what was there to be surprised about when the Star Battle Academy was destroyed? They weren't making much of a fuss, but the East Continent was already in a state of shock. First, it was the Gongsun family, then it was the Star Academy. Who was next? The remaining Sky Court, Divine Firmament Court, Heavenly Sword Court, Heavenly Devil Court, and Myriad Court were all apprehensive. They were even more afraid that Chu Yang would make things difficult for them. Hence, they began to gather and discuss. Eventually, they banded together and gathered in one place, the Sky Court. Other than the 5 leaders of the 5 great academies who were saints, there was at least one saint among the old antiques of the 5 great academies. It was just that they did not reveal themselves. The only thing they were clear about was that the 10 sages of the 5 academies had joined hands to eliminate Chu Yang. They even issued a call to action, exposing Chu Yang's wild ambition. Chu Yang's not going against the East Continent was just a high-sounding excuse. When Chu Yang unified the East Continent, he would cruelly persecute the people of the East Continent. At that time, disaster would befall the people of the East Continent. The 10 sages of the 5 academies were far-sighted and had great rallying power. They also received the approval of many people. Many heroes of the East Continent gathered in the Sky Court, forming a torrent and a general trend. This general trend was the general trend of the East Continent and no longer the general trend of the Eastern Wilderness. They would gather to encircle and annihilate Chu Yang. After killing him, they would pacify the chaos in the Eastern Wilderness. Among them, some people even issued the slogan of exterminating the Eastern Wilderness. For a time, the two forces of the Eastern Wilderness and the East Continent were like fire and water. They were in an irreconcilable state. In this wave, the 10 sages of the 5 academies were the leaders, and they removed all their disguises. In such a situation, some people were happy, while others were worried. Chen Zi was hiding in the dark. When he heard such news, he loudly agreed. The inspector of the East Continent frowned. He went to look for Shangguan Lan and received news that Chu Yang was determined to take over the East Continent. Anyone who stood in his way would be killed. After hearing this, Chu Yang sneered and directly spread the news. First, he would destroy Gongsun family, then destroy the Star Academy, then slaughter the sky, kill the 5 academies, and suppress the East Continent. Chapter 2151. The blue tiles and cornices were graceful and hazy. It was fresh and euphemistic, and the shade was appropriate. The rain alternated between light and heavy rain. The sky courtyard was shrouded in the misty rain, like an ink painting. The ink painting and misty rain were freehand and elegant. Looking at the entire sky courtyard from afar, one could vaguely see strange pines, strange rocks, clouds, and layers of mountains in the distance, shrouded in thin mist. The intertwining shades outlined the majestic majesty. Such a sky courtyard was beautiful and quiet, but only from afar. In the nearby sky courtyard, there was a hubbub of voices, and it was unusually noisy. There was a tense atmosphere all the time, and everyone's heartstrings seemed to be pulled taut by a hand. Among them, there should be a great sense of defense and vigilance. The entire sky courtyard was like a military camp with countless troops. They were always in a state of readiness for war because the opponent was very shocking. Perhaps the opponent was only one person, but one person was enough to frighten people. The Gongsun family was an example, and the Star Academy was another. These two examples were enough to prove that the person called Chu Yang was powerful and had supreme power. No one dared to underestimate him. Such a scene and such a big event naturally had no lack of discussion. Knowing that there are tigers in the mountain, he still goes there. Do you think that Chu Hang dares to come? He clearly knows that the 5 academies are gathered here and there are 10 sages, He has already said that he will first destroy the Gongsun family, then destroy the Star Academy, then slaughter the Sky Courtyard, and kill the 5 academies. So he will probably come. However, it's hard to say. Who can guess what Chu Hang will think and what he will do? He definitely won't dare to come. There are 10 sages. He will be courting death if he comes. If he dares to come, then he is a pure fool. A pure fool? Immediately, many people in the crowd burst out laughing. Chu Hang bullies a fool like you. Do you know that the Chu family is a facade? If you use an ordinary person's point of view to understand a godly person like Chu Hang, I think you are the pure fool. If everyone in the world is like you, Chu Hang will laugh like crazy. No, he probably found it boring. Invincible in the world, lonely as snow. This person was mocked until his face turned red and he couldn't say a single word. He had indeed underestimated Chu Yang in his heart, but he found that his point of view could not get the approval of others at all, so he was completely laughed at. That's Chu Hang. Is it wise for us to do so? Chu Hang's request was to give equal status to the Eastern Wilderness. So what if I give it to you? You actually want to take the risk and resist? I don't understand. The topic of discussion in the crowd quickly changed. If only it were that simple. The 5 great academies don't believe in Pit Chu. On the other hand, Pit Chu definitely doesn't believe in the 5 great academies. Therefore, this battle is inevitable. After the winner takes all and the loser takes all, the ruler of the East Continent can be determined. That's right. But if we let Chu Hang sweep over them one by one and control everything, he might not just want the Eastern Wilderness's status in the East Continent. I'm afraid he will enslave all of us in the East Continent. By then, it will be too late to resist. I also agree with the 5 great academies' approach. No matter how capable Chu Hang is, I'm afraid he will have to consider 10 sages. Chapter 2152. Countless people in the East Continent were paying attention to this battle. Everyone in the Eastern Wilderness and the East Continent were paying attention to this battle. This battle had touched everyone's heartstrings. Before this, no one had expected that the situation in the East Continent would develop into such a situation. No one had expected that, just like the Sky Academy, Chu Yang could have the ability to control the East Continent in such a short time. Therefore, when Chu Yang was in the Sky Academy, although the leader of the Sky Academy and other high-level officials had noticed him, they still didn't pay attention to him and allowed him to do whatever he wanted. By the time they realized it, it was already too late to change anything. Chu Yang, who was only in the Dharma characteristic realm and had not reached the Nirvana realm, could easily kill a saint and destroy 2 forces in the East Continent in succession. Who could have foreseen such a thing in advance? How could they have prevented it? Qianzi changed his appearance and mingled in the crowd with Viper from the Dark Thorn. Hearing people's discussion and feeling the tense atmosphere around him, he said to Viper, "Did you see that? Do you still think it's too much for me to gather all the saint-level experts of the Dark Thorn to deal with that dog? If we don't act in advance, we will end up like the Sky Academy and the 5 great academies." Viper nodded. This was also completely beyond his expectations. What shocked him more was that he sensed that the students of the 5 great academies actually thought that Chu Yang was more likely to win. Liu Yunpeng, Xia Wanjin, and Xiong Longxiang were students of the Sky Academy, so they were naturally present at this moment. The little Zen master Fa Zhao, Mu Zizhen, Ji Yinyan, Ji Yinmeng, and the others were all present. They were also waiting for this battle. Someone is coming. The crowd shouted. Soon, everyone heard the sound of something breaking through the air. When they looked over, they saw 3 saints coming together, Sima Jian, Saint Peng, and Xia Jie. The arrival of the 3 saints directly made the crowd boil. The 3 saints are already here. That means Chu Hang will definitely come later. The big explosion and the 3 saints are here. Who knows what will happen next? That's the choice Chu Hang made. I'll give you a suggestion. You'd best not guess. That's useless. With the arrival of Sima Jian and the other 2 sages, the atmosphere in the Sky Academy became even more tense. The leaders of the 5 great academies, the headmasters of the 5 great academies, and the 5 saints of the 5 great academies all felt their heartstrings tighten at this moment. I won't do anything. Feel the power of the eastern wilderness, Sima Jian said indifferently. But who could understand the excitement in his heart? He almost couldn't control himself. The rise of the eastern wilderness was much faster and fiercer than he had imagined. Saint Peng and Xie Jie also expressed that they wouldn't interfere, causing the crowd to become even more chaotic. The place became even more clamorous, and voices could be heard everywhere. Brother Sima. When Xie Jie sensed the atmosphere around him, he couldn't help but ask Sima Jian, are we really going to end up like this? Shouldn't you do something about that bastard? Care. Although Sima Jian knew what Xie Jie meant, he couldn't help but mock him. Brother Xie, not only do you think too highly of yourself, but you also think too highly of me. How could he control Chu Yang? Sima Jian didn't think he was qualified. Even if he had the ability, how could he be an obstacle to Chu Yang? That would be a joke. When Xie Jie heard Sima Jian's words, he couldn't help but shake his head. He thought that Sima Jian didn't know how to appreciate kindness, so he secretly mocked and even despised him. Chu Yang was ignorant, and Sima Jian was ignorant as well. He turned to Saint Peng and said, Brother Peng, according to the development of this matter, I'm afraid it'll get worse and worse. When the time comes, I'm afraid it'll be unimaginable. Chapter 2153. Xie Jie was infuriated by Sage Peng's disdain. Since Brother Peng already knows, why are you still asking? Am I wrong? Oh. Sage Peng smiled. Do you know my Peng slashing Dao art? How could Xie Jie not know? After hearing this, he looked a bit confused. The Peng slashing Dao art had nothing to do with what was happening right now. He said I chose too high a base for my Peng slashing Dao art. I was worried that he didn't know the drawbacks of choosing too low a base, but now I don't have to worry at all. Sage Peng's eyes were wild. So what if he's a god emperor? Brother Xie, what you're thinking might be exactly what he wants. Kill a god emperor and obtain freedom. The Peng slashing Dao art will no longer be the Peng slashing Dao art, but the emperor slashing Dao art. Kill a god emperor. Xie Jie felt like he'd been struck by lightning. He was dumbfounded. Killing a god emperor. If an ordinary person said it, a god emperor would immediately sense it and die. Sage Peng's cultivation was so high that a god emperor wouldn't sense it. Even so, who would dare to say they could kill a god emperor so easily? In his eyes, Sage Peng was a madman. Sage Peng sensed hostility in Xie Jie's heart and knew he might betray him. He couldn't help but snort. Brother Xie, let me give you a reminder. My young friend invited you here because you're a junior of the Xie family. You'd better not be so shameless. To be honest, you won't make a difference whether you're here or not. Wang. Xie Jie's mind buzzed. Chu Yang really didn't need to invite him here. Sage Peng could have invited a lot of people who were far stronger than him. You'd better adjust your attitude. Sage Peng warned again. Don't think you're high and mighty and look down on him. You don't have the ability or qualifications to do so. Otherwise, you'll soon be a dead man. Xie Jie was a top-tier saint. Although he didn't show his arrogance, it had always been there. He subconsciously looked down on Chu Yang. At least for now, Chu Yang wasn't worthy of his respect. Peng Sheng was well aware of this, which was why he warned him. In the end, he said one more sentence, and then fell silent. Also, Brother Xie has already warned you, you'd better behave yourself. Xie Jiren shuddered again as he recalled the saint of the saints' world who had taken Chu Yang as his master. It wasn't impossible for Chu Yang to kill him, but he couldn't see through Chu Yang either. At this moment, he finally realized that he didn't put himself in the right position. Even if Chu Yang was recognized as an extraterrestrial demon and investigated by the central province, it had nothing to do with him. It was not something he should consider at all. After a while, amidst the exclamations of the crowd, Shangguan Lan arrived with little Guari. The inspector of East Continent immediately stepped forward and bowed. However, he was only told that she would never fight, so he came to see his fiancée. The actions of Shangguan Lan, Rock Saint, and the other three saints gave people a lot of pressure. What level had Chu Yang reached to actually dare to do this? The atmosphere became even more tense and heavy. Along with the passage of time, a voice suddenly sounded out from afar, and it shocked everyone. "Sorry for the long wait, everyone. I'm here." Chu Yang. Was Chu Yang here? In an instant, everyone looked towards the source of the voice, but all they saw was emptiness and nothingness. "Waha, this divine bird is about to make a dazzling appearance. Everyone, please pay attention, there's a high-energy warning ahead, please be prepared." The voice was interrupted, and immediately a scream was heard, followed by curses. "Chu Hang, what do you mean by this? Are you jealous that this divine bird is in the limelight? Do you know how to use words? What high-energy warning ahead? Are you joking? You're really ruining our image." They didn't see the person, but they heard the voices in unison. Many people immediately concluded that Chu Hang was here. Chu Hang was always like this. He could instantly make the tense and suffocating atmosphere become relaxed and cheerful, but what would happen next would not be relaxed at all. This was also what made Du Zhong's hair stand on end. Pit Chu's influence on them was already so deep. At this time, Chu Yang finally appeared on the horizon. He was getting closer and closer, and the continental plate of the eastern wilderness appeared behind him. Many people living in the eastern wilderness and so on lived on it. He seemed to be carrying the torrent of the eastern wilderness, and also like the surging tide of history, which no one could resist. However, Chu Yang came alone. Chapter 2154. A gust of wind swept across, whistling in all directions. The sound waves were like waves, rushing in all directions. Along with Chu Yang's arrival, the misty and hazy world became clear little by little. The dark clouds in the sky were rolled up by a great force, and rushed towards the other side of the sky. The haze in the sky was torn apart, and the sky became lofty once again. The mist was also blown away, and everything that was shrouded in the mist was revealed. The whole sky courtyard instantly changed from an ink painting of misty rain to a painting of a mixture of mountains and mortals, and the bustling crowd was also revealed. Boom! Chu Yang suddenly stopped in the sky above the sky courtyard. The moment he stopped, the world shook violently, and the deafening sound resounded in all directions, shaking everyone's mind. The power was shocking, soul-stirring, and chilling. Although Chu Yang came alone, he gave many people great shock and pressure, as if a large army was pressing down on them. They were originally relaxed because of Chu Yang's antics, but in the blink of an eye, they became extremely heavy, and the smiles on their faces could no longer appear on their faces. At this moment, every pair of eyes fell on Chu Yang's body without blinking. A slender figure, a white robe, a handsome face, and a trace of an evil smile on his face. He looked like a rich family's playboy. He also looked like an evil god, but he looked more like a street ruffian. The continental plate of the eastern wilderness appeared behind him, and they could see it more clearly. It seemed to be no different from the East continent. There were also all kinds of living beings, the world of mortals, happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy, and the alternation of prosperity and decline. Every person living in the eastern wilderness seemed to jump out vividly and into people's perception. All of a sudden, everyone seemed to have traveled through time and space and entered the eastern wilderness. In an instant, they seemed to feel everything in the eastern wilderness. The most profound thing was Chu Yang's fame in the eastern wilderness, as well as the recognition of Chu Yang by the people in the eastern wilderness. In addition to the continental plate of the eastern wilderness, part of the continental plate of the East continent also appeared. The people in the eastern wilderness of the East continent also appeared one by one, converging into a torrent behind Chu Yang. Psychic power, the psychic power of the eastern wilderness. What a powerful psychic power! It's hard to imagine. There are two psychic powers from the eastern wilderness, but the psychic power of the people living in the eastern wilderness on the East continent seems to be stronger, purer, and more fanatical. The phenomenon behind Chu Yang wasn't difficult to understand. Saints could understand it with a glance, and those who hadn't reached the saint realm could also understand it. But only now did they understand Chu Yang's position in the eastern wilderness. In the East continent, many people only thought of Chu Yang as a dog, or a person, a supreme genius, an unprecedented joke. At this moment, they suddenly realized that Chu Yang was the flag and leader of the eastern wilderness. He was the king of the eastern wilderness, deeply loved and supported by the people in the eastern wilderness. The people in the eastern wilderness of the East Continent respectfully called Chu Yang the Desolate Emperor, and it was obviously not without basis. At this moment, Chu Yang's arrival was like bringing countless troops from the eastern wilderness, and he was the commander of this army. He also seemed to bring the flood of the eastern wilderness. The flood of the eastern wilderness's era rushed over, sweeping up the flood of the East Continent's era, forming an even greater flood of the era. Chu Yang seemed to be a natural leader, a leader of the era. He didn't come alone. He brought the people of the eastern wilderness, and even the people of the East Continent, and even the mission of this era. Chapter 2155. At this moment, everyone finally understood why Chu Yang was so arrogant and looked down on everyone. Why was he so unbridled and fearless? It was because he was the king of the eastern wasteland. The king came from the eastern wilderness and ruled over the Eastern Continent. So what if there were many traitors and vassals? How could they make the king lower his head and compromise? In the face of all this, he might only feel anger and ruthlessness. Once the time was right, he would sweep through everything and unify the world once more. Now, that moment had arrived. The Five Academies Alliance was the biggest rebellion, the final rebellion. Chu Yang had quelled the chaos. His imposing manner and heroic spirit, as well as his boundless might, had truly shocked everyone's mind. Xie Jie's eyes widened. The wills of the eastern wilderness and the Eastern Continent seem to approve of him. Only when this condition is met, with the support of the people of the eastern wilderness, can such a situation happen. But how is this possible? He didn't know that Chu Yang had left his mark in the eastern wasteland, and also in the Eastern Continent. So, how was it impossible for them to communicate? But Xie Jie never thought of this. He believed that Chu Yang could leave his mark in the eastern wilderness, but he didn't believe that Chu Yang could leave his mark in the Eastern Continent. The Eastern Wilderness was almost separated from the heavenly soul world, but the Eastern Continent wasn't. The Eastern Continent was in the main world of the heavenly soul world. Leaving one's mark in the Eastern Continent was the same as leaving one's mark in the heavenly soul world. If this was successful, when the mark matured, one could control the entire heavenly soul world. The heavenly soul world definitely wouldn't allow it. Xie Jie couldn't do it even if he was a peak saint, not even earthly sovereigns. Only great emperors could do it. However, this was completely different. Great emperors leaving their mark in the heavenly soul world were two completely different concepts compared to Chu Yang. The former was the acknowledgement of the heavenly soul world to the great emperor, but the great emperor was just an outsider to the heavenly soul world. The latter was the child of the heavenly soul world who had grown up and would inherit everything of the heavenly soul world. Therefore, although the two looked similar, they were actually worlds apart. As expected, I didn't put myself in the right position. I thought too highly of myself. Xie Jie didn't know the reason behind this, so he was even more wary of Chu Yang. He recalled his subconscious disdain and contempt towards Chu Yang, and cold sweat began to form on his forehead. Just as Rock Sage had said, he was too ignorant. If Xie Jie was so shocked, the others were even more shocked. Shangguan Lan's beautiful eyes flickered. Her brother goat had once again given her a big surprise, which was beyond her imagination. At this time, the inspector of the East Continent finally understood why Shangguan Lan chose Chu Yang as her fiancé. He thought that the Shangguan clan or Duke Ju were ignorant, but that was only because he was too stupid and didn't have the slightest foresight. He only saw Chu Yang's current unbearable situation, but he couldn't see the glory of Chu Yang in the future. Feng Porlong, Zong Jian, Liu Yunpeng, Xie Wanjin, Xiong Longxiang, Ji Yinyin, Ji Yinmeng, and the others were all speechless. They stared blankly at the slender figure in the air, that indecent person. Everyone, I'm sorry. When I heard that the 5 academies were in chaos, I quickly took a bath and changed my clothes. That's why I'm late. Chu Yang cupped his fists at everyone and said, I hope everyone can forgive me. But in the end, I still let everyone see how elegant and dignified this commander is. So, your wait was worth it. Chapter 2156. Waha. The parrot on Chu Yang's shoulder also said wildly, Everyone, please pay attention to the high-energy warning ahead. It wantonly showed off, and then proudly said, Your weight is worth it. This divine bird has combed its feathers, and only then can you see a divine bird that has never been seen before. You should be grateful. The parrot was like a fox exploiting the tiger's majesty. To everyone, it was just a favored subject that relied on the tyrant's favor to do whatever it wanted. Pa. After a crisp sound, the scene that appeared caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. Little bitch, are you stupid? The high energy warning ahead is not used like this. Let me emphasize again, the one standing on my shoulder is not allowed to use the high energy warning ahead. Scammer Chew, stop your bullshit. This divine bird likes this sentence. What can you do? At most, I'll let you cut off my wings and barbecue them. The man and the bird had already started fighting. It was very funny and made people even more confused. The parrot screamed and became a naked parrot in an instant. However, it continued to clamor, high energy warning ahead. Chu Hang is shedding the divine bird's feathers skillfully. I like this servant very much. It was hung up and roasted by a fireball below, but it still did not surrender. High energy warning ahead. This divine bird is not afraid of fire. Please take a look. Applause. Go away, stay away from the center of the world. Chu Hang was furious. He grabbed the parrot and threw it out. The featherless parrot instantly became a black dot, but in the next moment, the parrot had already flown back. When it flew back, its feathers were already fully grown. The colorful feathers on its body were extremely bright, shining with bursts of colorful light, like a colorful diamond. Chu Hang is cruel, but for the center of the world, for the attention of everyone, this divine bird has decided to temporarily give up my favorite high-energy warning ahead. Chu Hang, you'd better stop before going too far. This divine bird has already compromise. That makes sense. I'm moved by your compromise. I'll reward you to the center of the world and enjoy the glory of being the center of attention, Chu Yang said with a serious expression. Everyone present burst into laughter. Some people even couldn't help but wonder if the 5 academies had gathered. If the 10 sages had really appeared, would this earth-shattering battle that would determine who would dominate the East continent really happen? Chu Yang didn't take this matter seriously at all. Every move of Chu Yang's had thrown them into disarray. What does this dog rely on? Qian Zi, who was hiding in the crowd, looked at the unscrupulous Chu Yang with a gloomy face. His hatred and killing intent surged in his heart. Xie Jie felt a headache. He had underestimated Chu Yang, but now he seemed to realize that Chu Yang had already despised him like a dog or insect, just like the 10 sages of the 5 academies in front of the Sky Academy, the 5 academies, and the 10 sages of the 5 academies. Who was looking down on whom? At the thought of this, Xie Jie felt very depressed. He was completely despised by Chu Yang. He was afraid that Chu Yang didn't even bother to warn him. The reason why he warned him was because of Xie Wanjin. Ha ha ha. Chu Yang suddenly put his hands on his hips and laughed wildly. Everyone, the high-energy warning ahead. Please prepare your titanium alloy dog eyes. Hey! He suddenly shouted at the 10 sages of the Sky Academy. Those old guys, are you angry? Can't stand it anymore? Many people were shocked by Chu Yang's roar, and then their hearts thumped. Chu Yang was unbridled and humiliated the 5 academies, but he actually went from bad to worse and wanted a yard after taking an inch. Chapter 2157. Chu Hang, didn't we agree not to use the high energy warning? How dare you deceive this divine bird? While everyone was caught off guard, the parrot suddenly erupted and attacked Chu Yang furiously, attacking fiercely. You can't understand the high energy warning's instruction manual and don't know how to use it. I'm teaching you the correct way to activate the high energy warning. Bullshit. The high energy warning is so cool. It has to be used on this divine bird. Chu Hang, you're blaspheming the high energy warning. Fine, fine, fine. I'll let you activate the high energy warning. Immediately, the bright feathers fluttered in the air. The parrot instantly turned into a naked bird and was hung up to dry. At this moment, everyone was really affected by the high energy warning. They were waiting for the fury of the 10 saints of the 5 academies. They were waiting for a shocking blow or a heaven-shaking battle. Who would have thought that a lousy bird would appear and make fun of their weight and mess up their hearts? Many people's hearts were really like that lousy bird. The bright feathers fluttered in the air. That kind of sour feeling, needless to mention. Wild dog, you're too presumptuous. How dare you, how dare you? You're just a mere ant. How dare you act so wantonly in front of us? The angry voice was like thunder, like a heavenly drum, like the wrath of the thunder god. When it fell into everyone's ears, they were suddenly shocked. They couldn't help but be alarmed. The void even shook as if it was already trembling in fear. How many people could withstand the might of a saint? With these few angry roars, who knew how many people present felt their legs go weak and directly paralyzed on the ground? Many people even knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Chuyang naturally felt the impact and pressure. To be exact, the impact and pressure he felt were the most astonishing and terrifying. The principles of the world had already descended on his body, and were about to turn him into ashes and vanish in a puff of smoke. However, everything was just like the wind. It wasn't even a gale. He turned his cold eyes and looked over. Immediately, a thin face entered his eyes. His complexion was dark, and under his faint eyebrows, a pair of old eyes were wide open, as if they could spit fire. This man was about 70 years old. The leader of the Sky Academy stood respectfully beside him. His skin was like an old tree, and his hands were covered with worm-like blood vessels. He was pointing at Chuyang angrily. The former leader of the Sky Academy, Lu Lishue. Chuyang immediately recognized this old man. After he had helped the Silver Wolf in his revenge and destroyed the current and former leaders of the Star Battle Academy, he had extracted their souls in order to understand the strength of the 6 great academies. Thus, he knew this old man very well. Are you very angry to release a monster like me? Chuyang gave his trademark chuckle. According to the old guy's reaction, he was guessing how regretful the old guy was. When Chuyang was in the Sky Academy, the old guy had countless chances to kill him. Evil creature, you're about to die, but you still don't know how to repent. The person who had just spoken was naturally not just an old guy. This time, this person was also extremely angry and spoke for the second time. Chuyang looked over with a mocking expression. This old guy had a chubby face. His hair was neatly combed, and there wasn't a single strand of messy hair. In his slightly sunken eye sockets were a pair of dark brown sharp eyes. The former leader of the Divine Firmament Academy, Chang Yuankue, Chuyang also recognized him. The Academy Master, the leader, and the former leader were the organizational structure of the 6 great academies. The former leaders were all saints, and after they retired, they had to undergo death trials to break through to the Earth Sovereign Realm. After Chuyang dealt with the Star Battle Academy, they were all blown out. This is a mad dog. It's a disgrace to be angry with him. This old guy also spoke for the second time. It was the former leader of the Myriad Academy, Shueligua. His forehead was especially large, and it didn't match his face. The outline of his face was also strange, and all his teeth were missing. Chapter 2158. That's right. With our status, how can we be angry with a mad dog? This was the previous leader of the Heavenly Sword Academy, Cao Jiwen. His hand was as big as a thin fan, and his fingers were so thick that they couldn't be bent. His skin was wrinkled like tree bark. In the blink of an eye, the previous leaders of the 5 academies had all spoken. In addition to these 4 old men, there was also the previous leader of the Heavenly Demon Academy, Lan Shoujie. Although Lan Shoujie didn't say anything, his eyes were like the eyes of a demon as he stared at Chuyang gloomily. The previous leaders of the 5 academies and the current leaders made up a total of 10 saints. This lineup was strong enough that no one in the East Continent could shake it. The strength of the previous leaders of the 5 academies was naturally a great tribulation higher than the current leaders. Although they were all saints, there was a huge difference between them. For example, Rock Sage and Bing Kuan were at the top of the saint plane. There were 9 levels in the sage realm. If the sage's great path was a dish and every sage was a chef, then a sage who had just stepped into the sage realm was like a chef who had just graduated from a technical school. They were rookies. After they mastered the methods of a few key dishes, they would improve again. In the end, they would become special level chefs or the highest level chefs. Saints at this level were like chefs and technicians. Not only did they have a high salary, but they also had many other income. They were hired by chef schools to teach students and serve as judges for some competitions. Simply put, in front of a level 9 saint, a level 1 saint was a student. They were almost worthless. The previous leaders of the 5 academies were mostly level 4 saints. Compared to Bing Kuan and Peng Saint, they were naturally much weaker. They were also much weaker than the Gongsun clan's saints. However, compared to Chu Yang, they were much stronger. In front of them, Chu Yang was more like a dog, a head, and some kind of ingredient. The previous leaders of the 5 academies had all expressed their opinions, and the crowd couldn't help but be in an uproar. The previous leaders are not comparable to the current leaders. Does Chu Hang think that the matter is not big enough? Does he have to make the 5 of them angry? Are you trying to say that Pit Chu will not be able to escape this calamity and will undoubtedly die? If it were anyone else, I would dare to bet my head, but who would dare to do that to Chu Hang? This bastard's lethal ability is definitely not something he says casually. I'd better cherish it for now. The hubbub wasn't small. Chu Yang looked at the old faces in the hubbub. They were angry and disdainful. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He said, "Since you're like this, then I'll start too." After a pause, he coldly said to everyone present, all beauties and handsome men below the level of sages, little monks, nuns, little lollis, little shotas, and so on, please move to the safe zone in the correct posture, and then turn on the viewing mode. Those who don't understand human language will lose a leg, break an arm, or meet the king of hell. I'll make it clear in advance that I won't be responsible for it. Boom. The crowd was instantly thrown into chaos. They immediately rushed out in all directions. At this moment, many people were reminded of Chu Hang's thunder tribulation. Anyone below the level of sages would be unlucky and die unjustly. After the crowd retreated in panic, even the leaders of the 5 academies hid at this time. The 10 saints of the 5 academies seemed lonely and weak. They seemed to have been abandoned, or in other words, they were the only 10 pieces of gold left. Even the leaders of the 5 academies hid at this time. Chapter 2159. Hihi, my ability to clear the field is not bad. Chu Yang praised himself, looked at the crowd, and said again, "Miss Su, in the 7-wheel demon domain, I saw that you were a girl. You are a good person, so I will give you a chance." He accurately found Su Yiling in the crowd. Immediately, everyone's eyes fell on Su Yiling. Su Yiling was caught off guard. Her face turned red, and there was some embarrassment on her face, but it quickly disappeared. Immediately, her flower-like beautiful face revealed a worried expression, and her delicate eyebrows wrinkled. At this time, the crowd was once again in an uproar. Chu Hang, isn't this clearly admitting that he is Eastern Wilderness 002? Without a doubt, Chu Hang is Eastern Wilderness 002. Although this guess can be confirmed, he admitted it himself, which is completely true. At that time, who would believe him when he said that he was Eastern Wilderness 002? Almost everyone was fooled by him. Chu Yang being Eastern Wilderness 002 diverted everyone's attention, making Su Yiling more relaxed and calm. In the 7-wheel demon domain, not to mention other things, just the fact that she did not attack Chu Yang made Chu Yang have to thank her. "Wild dog, you're presumptuous." Chang Yuenkue roared. His brown eyes were extremely cold, and the leader of the Divine Firmament Academy was also filled with killing intent. Didn't Chu Yang clearly say that he wanted to kill the 2 of them like chickens and dogs? How could they endure such humiliation? Presumptuous? Chu Yang said indifferently with a smile that was not a smile. "Old man, can you use another word? Also, when I speak, can you not maintain a listening posture? This is good for you." Chang Yuenkue was about to explode, but Chu Yang pointed at Rock Sage. Immediately, his arrogance disappeared, and his old face turned red. "My uncle is there, my grandfather is there, my wife is there, don't be shameless." Chu Yang sneered, "You've made me angry. I'll kill you first, and then I'll see who else dares to interrupt." He had slapped the faces of the 10 saints of the 5 academies in front of everyone. While the 10 saints felt extremely humiliated, they were also secretly shocked. People were even more shocked. Come to think of it, the sage invited by Chu Yang had only gone to the Gongsun family for a stroll. It could be said that he had barely done anything. However, Chu Yang's people had already suppressed the East Continent. Sage Peng and the other 2 saints seemed to be there to support him. In fact, they weren't even there to support him. They were only there to strengthen his momentum. With the 3 of them here, why couldn't Chu Yang be impudent? If he couldn't be impudent, then who could? Miss Su, have you thought it through? Do you want to try persuading him? Chu Yang seemed to want to divide the 5 academies, but everyone knew that there was no need for that, because he could let Rock Sage and the others do it. Therefore, he was really giving Su Yiling face. Many people present seemed to have seen through Chu Yang's character from this side view. He didn't treat the people of the East Continent as evil. If you were evil, he would be even more evil. Of course, many people saw through Chu Yang's sinister intentions. They understood that he was trying to win the hearts of the people of the East Continent. Damn it. Qian Zi gritted his teeth in the crowd. This way, the East Continent wouldn't be as turbulent as he had imagined. The Eastern Wilderness and the East Continent wouldn't be like fire and water, and they wouldn't fight to the death. My words carry little weight. Su Yiling finally gritted her teeth and said this sentence. She had the intention, but she was powerless to persuade the leader of the Divine Firmament Academy. I understand. Chu Yang shouted at the crowd again. Feng Porlong, Zong Jian, it's your turn. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Chu Yang's gaze accurately found Feng Porlong and Zong Jian. In an instant, the 2 of them received the same treatment as Su Yiling. Chapter 2160. Say, does Chu Hang have to kill someone? Feng Porlong scratched his head and said gloomily. Nonsense. I'm very familiar with the leader. If you're very familiar with him, then tell him to get lost. Can't you just beat him up and let him go? Feng Porlong widened his eyes and was furious. Chu Yang glanced at him coldly. If I lose, can your acquaintance beat me up and let me go? It's hard to persuade a damned ghost with kind words. You can't see the situation clearly and insist on dying, but you're here to find trouble with me. Son of a bitch, how did this young master encounter such a thing? Feng Porlong howled for a while and shouted at the leader of the Sky Sword Academy. Are you a damned ghost? Can you understand human language? When he saw the leader's gloomy face, he immediately shut up and got lost. Su Yiling had no choice, so he had no choice either. Zong Jian did not say anything either. Of course, he had no choice either. Chu Hang is that godly detective. It's that Liu San. As soon as he said that, the crowd burst into an uproar again. That's right. Liu San has a relationship with Feng Porlong and Zong Jian. Doesn't Chu Hang mean that his Liu San? Fuck, Chu Hang is actually a godly detective. Is there anything he doesn't know? Is there still justice? The person who killed the saint and kidnapped his big brother must be the same person. He was also fooled by Chu Hang. There's nothing to say about his method. The leaders and academy masters of the 5 academies were shocked. As soon as Liu San's mystery was revealed, they immediately knew that Chu Yang must have known everything about them. No wonder Chu Yang did not give anyone face during the 6 academies' joint competition. Chu Yang was Liu San. Too many people did not expect him to be Liu San. When Qian Zi, who was in the crowd, heard the mockery, the hatred in his heart was indescribable. Blood rushed to his head, and his vision turned black. He almost fainted on the ground. Originally, he was about to succeed in everything, but he was actually played in circles by Chu Yang's little trick. This was no different from a heavy blow. After all, I was once a student of the Sky Court. Chu Yang looked at the students and leaders of the Sky Academy and said in a deep voice, "Don't say that we didn't give you a chance. Which one of you wants to persuade the damn Sky Academy? Little Zen Master Fa Zhao? Amitabha Buddha." Among the crowd, the little Zen Master Fa Zhao only chanted Amitabha Buddha. Monk Mu. When Chu Yang looked at Mu Zizhen felt like killing Chu Yang. He couldn't help but roar, "Chu Hang, this young master only likes Buddha, not a monk. I don't need your statement. Mu Zizhen's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he kept cursing in his heart. The focus of the scene quickly shifted to the Sage Master and the two former and current leaders of the Sky Academy. Chu Yang looked at the three of them and said, "To be honest, you don't have many chances. It's rare for me to give you a chance." The three of them looked gloomy and didn't say anything. Chu Yang already knew their choice. He turned to the two leaders of the Sky Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy and said, "I think my brother should have persuaded you too, but you still appeared here. This is also the last chance I'll give you. Live or die, you choose." Jing Wuming. Jing Wuming and Chu Fei were sworn brothers. Jing Wuming once said that Chu Yang was his little brother. Who didn't know this? Therefore, it was not strange for Chu Yang to do this. However, this was the competition between the Eastern Wilderness and the East Continent. Since the two leaders of the Sky Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy had decided to stand on the opposite side of Chu Yang, how could Chu Yang show mercy if they didn't show mercy? Of course, the choice of the two leaders was also very important. Once they chose not to fight with Chu Yang and withdrew, it meant that the Sky Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy had withdrawn from the 5 academies, and the strength of the 5 academies would be greatly reduced. This was definitely something that the other 3 academies and many people in the East Continent didn't want to see. Chapter 2161. Silence reigned, and the atmosphere was stifling. The sky was still gloomy, and water vapor and fog still shrouded the world. The dark clouds that Chu Yang had dispelled earlier and the hazy white fog shrouded the entire sky courtyard once again. Like an ink painting of misty rain, the entire sky courtyard was shrouded in mist and water. Pairs of eyes fell on the two leaders of the Heavenly Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy. Both of them looked conflicted and hesitant. The leaders of the other 3 academies were alarmed, but they didn't dare to make a sound. No one was allowed to disturb the two leaders' decision. No one was allowed to disturb them. That wild dog wouldn't allow it. Time passed quickly. Chu Yang didn't have the slightest bit of impatience. He quietly waited. However, the result of his waiting made him disappointed. Both of us have our own standpoints. How can we be biased and ignore the big picture? The leader of the Heavenly Demon Academy said. Although you and Wu Ming are brothers, there's no possibility of compromise. Life and death are determined by the heavens. If you just want to fight for the Eastern Wilderness's position in the East Continent, this should be enough, the leader of the Divine Firmament Academy also said. They couldn't back down because this matter concerned the future of the East Continent. They definitely couldn't hand over the East Continent to anyone. Is it enough? Chu Yang was cold. He didn't think this was enough. Even if it's enough, do I have to sympathize with you? Do I have to be merciful to you? His voice was cold again. You were cruel to the Eastern Wilderness. Naturally, I'll be cruel to you. Is there a problem with that? Chu Yang obviously had to be responsible for the Eastern Wilderness. Everything had been set in motion by him. He couldn't give up halfway and leave behind a great disaster. Only when the entire East Continent was under his control could he leave with peace of mind and head to the Middle Continent. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I'll call you elders for now. Chu Yang pondered for a moment, then pointed at Sage Peng. I'll remind you two elders that you don't have the right to negotiate with me. Even if the elders I've invited don't do anything, I can still destroy you with a wave of my hand. After a pause, he added, although my words were very rude and made you angry, this is the truth. Then there's nothing more to say. You and I will fight to the death and determine the victor. The Heavenly Demon Institute and Divine Firmament Institute's leaders were indeed angry, but they were also nervous. All right, Chu Yang said helplessly, I don't know how to persuade people. I'll let you see the difference in strength. I'll wait for your final decision. After saying that, he smiled at the crowd. Everyone, I heard that the Chu clan's illusion is very famous. Do you think there will be an illusion of the Chu clan this time? Chu clan illusion. Not to mention the others, even the leaders of the 5 academies felt their hearts skip a beat. They now knew that Chu Yang was good at this kind of trick, making people misunderstand that a certain trick was his trump card, But when it came to life and death, he suddenly revealed his real trump card, which made everyone stunned. "I'll show you what I've got. Pa. Pa." Chu Yang clapped his hands, and the monotonous yet continuous applause rang out. The sound was not very loud, but everyone could hear it clearly. Rumble. Right at this moment, a group of people rushed over from the distance. Their voices were like thunder as they arrived in the blink of an eye, as if they were also a bolt of lightning. There were a total of 5 people in this group, and the leader was one-armed. The moment he appeared, the 10 saints of the 5 academies suddenly cried out in joy. "Sect Master Luo, you're finally here." Chapter 2162. That's right. Once Sect Master Luo and the others are here, the wild dog will be nothing. Cao Jiwen, the former leader of the Sky Sword Academy, directly called Chu Yang a wild dog, causing the corners of Feng Porlong and Zong Jian's mouths to twitch. Is he really stupid, or is he pretending to be stupid? Chu Hang had just said that the Chu clan was an illusion, and Cao Jiwen dared to do that. Feng Porlong and Zong Jian were completely speechless. They could hardly blame Chu Yang in their hearts. Some people in the East Continent had discriminated against the Eastern Wilderness. Chu Yang had to get rid of them. Liu Yunpeng, Xia Wanjin, and Xiong Longxiang looked at the 2 leaders of the Sky Academy. They could only shake their heads and had nothing to say. This was really what Chu Hang had said. It was hard to persuade them with kind words. If these 2 old things didn't die, who would? Great, the people from the Myriad Demon sect are here. This time, that wild dog, let's see how he can do it. There are a total of 5 saints from the Myriad Demon sect. Among them, there are level 6 saints and even level 7 saint. In addition to the 10 saints from the 5 academies, there are a total of 15 saints. Isn't it easy to kill a wild dog? Haha, does the wild dog think that it's amazing just because it has some ability? Does it think that the East Continent is easy to bully? The East Continent discriminates against it as a wild dog. So what if we want to enslave it? The arrival of the Myriad Demon sect ignited many people in the East Continent. They expressed the malice in their hearts and shouted out the voices in their hearts. They even became complacent and began to curse Chu Yang crazily. All kinds of unpleasant words covered the sky and the earth. In an instant, the crowd was like a cesspool, and a foul smell seemed to be coming out from it. This time, Feng Porlong and Zong Jian were completely dumbfounded. They also did not understand why these people's brains were so simple. Little Zen Master Fa Zhao, Mu Zizhen, and the others also shook their heads. Little Zen Master Fa Zhao even kept saying Amitabha. He also thought that these people were hopeless. He. Chu Yang's sudden smile silenced all of a sudden. He then looked at the 2 leaders of the Heavenly Demon Academy and Divine Firmament Academy and sneered, "Is this what you call enough?" The struggle for power had always been bloody, and there was almost no peaceful transition. Without bloodshed and conflict, how could one forge the prestige of another power? The leaders of the Divine Firmament Hall and the Heavenly Demon Hall were speechless. "Old Lu, Old Baigong, the 2 of you are very happy." Chu Yang laughed and then said to the former leader of the Heavenly Sword Academy, "Old Cow, is it funny?" With a swoosh, the faces of the 3 suddenly became extremely ugly and gloomy. "You're angry." Chu Yang's sneer deepened. "How far have we gone? It's time for you to take a look at the facade of the Chu clan." As he spoke, he cupped his fists at Luo Cho. "Sect leader Luo, long time no see. I miss you." Luo Cho glanced at the 3 leaders of the Heavenly Sword Academy and Sky Academy with a sneer and secretly sympathized with them. "Don't you know who you're fighting? We haven't even done anything yet, and you're already so smug. How pitiful and hateful." After that, he cupped his fists at Chu Yang and returned the greeting. "Little bastard Chu, long time no see. I don't miss you at all. What's going on?" Lu Lixue, Cao Jiwen, and the others were stunned. It seemed that the 1,000 Demon sect and Wild Dog were very familiar with each other. When a possibility appeared in their hearts, they felt a wave of fear, but they did not believe it. However, not only did they see Luo Cho's disdain and ridicule, but they also saw the mocking expressions of the other 4 saints of the 1,000 Demon sect. "Impossible, how is this possible?" People were also shocked and naturally realized that something was wrong. Sect leader Luo, please give a speech, Chu Yang directly said. Chapter 2163. Everyone, I'm the Chu clan's illusion. Please understand, his last syllable was very long, and the crowd suddenly fell silent. Then, they exploded. The Chu clan's illusion? How did the 10,000 Demons sect become the Chu clan's illusion? I'm a little confused. Who can analyze and explain to me? They had already understood everything, but there were still too many people who were unwilling to believe it. The Chu clan's illusion is Chu Hang's trump card, a fake trump card. It's a gimmick to attract everyone's attention and deceive everyone. In that case, the 10,000 Demons sect is Chu Hang's trump card. Doesn't that mean they're on Chu Hang's side? Some people began to analyze it bit by bit. It was very comical and ridiculous. Impossible, this is impossible. The 10,000 Demons sect is from the East Continent. How could they side with the wild dog? This doesn't make sense. Screams of disbelief exploded from the crowd. I heard wrong, I must have heard wrong. How could such a thing happen? I don't believe it. This is simply unreasonable. Who would think that the 10,000 Demons sect would side with the wild dog? Many people's faces were as pale as paper, especially those who had cursed before. They were already trembling, and they almost fell to the ground on their buttocks. Lu Lishue, Cao Jiwen, Chang Yuankue, Lan Shoujie, Shueligua, and the current leaders of the 5 great academies were dumbfounded on the spot. To them, this was perhaps the most inconceivable thing in their lives, the most unbelievable thing. Feng Porlong and Zong Jian were also completely dumbfounded. They had thought that Chu Hang would have shocking methods, but they had never thought that the East Continent's advantage and the reinforcements that the 5 great academies were looking forward to were actually Chu Yang's method. That bastard, this time, he must have provoked those people from the East Continent quite a bit, right? Liu Yunpeng could only smile bitterly and shake his head. This was a huge surprise. It's more than just provoking. I think those people from the East Continent have already collapsed. Xia Wanjin couldn't help but exclaim, Pit Chu wants to completely break through the defenses in the hearts of the East Continent's people. He wants to trample on the pride and dignity of the East Continent and make sure that they can no longer be arrogant in front of the East Continent's people. Xiong, as someone from the East Continent, how do you feel right now? The two of them had the same thought and suddenly asked Xiong Longxiang. Xiong Longxiang's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Then, he roared, why don't you all die? Ha ha. The laughter of the two brought the crowd back to life. Brother Yang, that's enough. Shangguan Lan couldn't help laughing. She couldn't find the words to describe Chu Yang for a while, and this move was more damaging to Dongzhou's confidence than anything else. Rock Sage, Sima Jian, and Xia Jie were also surprised to the extreme, especially Xia Jie. This Chu Yang is really shocking. If I accidentally angered him, I might not even know how I died. The myriad demon sect and Chu Yang were actually able to turn against each other. Xia Jie was really shocked by this move. However, while everyone was shocked, Chu Yang looked at Zhongju with a faint gaze. No one knew what he was thinking, except for Luo Chou. All of this could be said to be Nangong Xing's credit. How could Luo Chou not know what Chu Yang was thinking at this moment? Chu Yang was worried about Nangong Xing. Although Luo Chou had previously said that Chu Yang was a hypocrite, the truth was definitely not so. Chu Yang definitely seemed to be a reliable partner. Seniors. Chu Yang suddenly looked at the two leaders of the Heavenly Demon Institute and the Divine Firmament Institute. This is the last time I'll call you seniors. This is the illusion of the Chu clan. What is your choice now? There's more. Chapter 2164. Wild dog, who are you threatening? You dog, killing you is as easy as lifting my hand. Why do you keep toying with us? Where are you relying on? A dog is a dog. You really think of yourself as a dog. Dog, dog, dog. These were the replies. Whether it was the previous leaders of the 5 academies, Lu Lishue, Cao Jiwen, Lan Shoujie, Chang Yuankue, Cao Ligua, or the current leaders of the 5 academies, they were all vicious. Chu Yang looked at those old and angry faces. He did not know if they were sincerely defending the East Continent and its rule in the Eastern Wilderness, or if they were just discriminating against him. He was really confused. Was the situation not clear enough? The three sages, Rock Sage, Sima Jian, and Xia Jie, had joined forces. Were the 10 of them enough? Were the 5 sages of the myriad demon sect just for show? However, why were these old things so obsessed? Wild dog. Chu Yang looked at the distant sky. His thoughts drifted for a while, and he seemed to have an answer in his heart. Immediately, his lips curled into a sinister arc. His words were bone-chilling. I'm eccentric by nature. I do things as I please. I'm ruthless and extreme. Today, I've tolerated and given you a chance. However, each of you has your own personality. His cold eyes were like lightning. He looked at the 10 sages fiercely. His gaze was like the gleam of a blade when it was unsheathed. That cold gleam made everyone's heart palpitate for no reason. I'd like to see how much personality you have. Will you smile or cry when you see the coffin? I'll send you on your way now. Rumble. His last words were like a heavy hammer that smashed on everyone's hearts. It was also like a hammer that hammered on Heaven Duke's heart. Heaven and earth roared. The void was like an unpredictable ocean, with raging waves and tsunamis that reached the sky. The sky seemed to darken completely at this moment. A boundless starry sky opened up behind Chu Yang. A majestic star figure appeared in that boundless starry sky. He seemed to be as tall as the heavens, standing in the starry sky. Although he was only an illusory image, he was like a real person. In his eyes, the sun rose and the moon set. The stars in the sky moved according to some kind of order. With a swoosh, he suddenly stared at everyone present. Star Sovereign? A living Star Sovereign? Many people were shocked. Has Tai Bai Jinxing been temporarily revived? Annihilating the Stardo Academy with a single hand? Looks like it's true and definitely not just a rumor. My heavens! The Star Sovereign is enraged. When he appears in the world again, who can withstand his wrath? Kaka. The phantom of a star venerate appeared, and the sound of teeth chattering continuously rang out from the crowd. At first, the 10 leaders of the 5 academies were also terrified. However, when they realized that Chu Yang had only activated the mark left behind by the Star Lord, their hearts calmed down and they began to run wild. It's just the phantom of a Star Lord. There's no need to fear this wild dog. Lu Lishue, the former leader of the Sky Academy, was the first to speak scornfully. Wild dog, is this your backing? That's right. How difficult is it to temporarily revive a dead emperor? The wild dog doesn't have such ability. Cao Jiwen, the former leader of the Sky Sword Academy, also sneered with a mocking expression. Bastard, if that's all you have, you can go die. Swoosh. Chu Yang's cold eyes swept over them, and the 10 saints were shocked. Especially Lu Lishue, who was being stared at by Chu Yang. The moment he felt Chu Yang's cold killing intent, he couldn't help but shiver. Are these the leaders of the old and new generation of the 5 academies of the Eastern Continent? None of them are of a higher level. At the very least, they don't have the ability to discern things. They are all useless. No wonder the Eastern Continent is so bad. Chapter 2165. Rumble. Another rumbling sound rang out, and the sky became even darker. A supreme figure appeared again, and wherever he stood, there was endless darkness. He stood side by side with the Star Sovereign's shadow. The Dark Demon Emperor. This was the phantom of the Dark Demon Emperor. Chu Yang had activated the mark left behind by him. Then, another supreme phantom appeared. It opened its mouth and swallowed. The world became completely dark, and there was almost no trace of light. It was as if the entire world was swallowed into the phantom's stomach. At this moment, everyone felt that their life and cultivation were about to be sucked out and devoured. 3 supreme phantoms, 3 supreme great emperors. Everyone was horrified. The 10 leaders of the 5 academies also felt their scalps go numb. Their old eyes trembled. Chu Yang could actually activate the marks left behind by 3 great emperors at the same time. This was almost enough to scare people to death. Every great emperor couldn't be guessed, and it was extremely difficult to activate the marks left behind by them. The sect master of the Thousand Demons sect, Luo Chou, was also shocked. Nangong Xing had told him with certainty that if Chu Yang agreed to help him take revenge, he wouldn't have to worry about his revenge. He had originally believed this, but at this moment, it was completely real. He's really extraordinary. Luo Chou couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. After the matter of the East Continent was over, Chu Yang should be going to the Central Continent. The day of his revenge should be near. Of the remaining 4 saints of the Thousand Demon sect, 3 were Luo Chou's elders, and 1 was his old servant. They originally only listened to Luo Chou, and Chu Yang didn't think very highly of them. But now, they realized how wise Luo Chou's choice was, and how much advantage they had. A person like Chu Yang was really too terrifying. How could a shallow beach like the East Continent bear such a big dragon? Everyone, don't panic. These are just the phantoms of the 3 great emperors. The wild dog is still a dog, and he is still just an ant. It will only take a little more effort to kill him. After Lu Lixue recovered from his shock, his entire body glowed, and a fierce look appeared on his aged face. The 3 great emperors are dead after all. Wild dog is just a fox pretending to be a tiger. Lan Xiujie sneered at Chu Yang. Wild dog, is this your plan? What a great illusion of the Chu clan. The leader of the Sky Academy said in a mocking tone. Hearing this, Luo Chou was dumbfounded. He was astonished and even flabbergasted. Were Lu Lixue and the others really that unbearable? Chu Yang had only just begun to display his abilities, and they had already come to a conclusion so quickly. How presumptuous! Not only did Luo Chou not understand, but Feng Porlong, Zong Jian, and many of the students from the 5 great academies, who had seen Chu Yang's methods, were also stunned. Were the high and mighty existences of the 5 great academies really so clumsy? Without a doubt, it definitely wasn't. The deepest reason was that they really regarded Chu Yang as a dog. They were unwilling to admit that Chu Yang was powerful, and they couldn't submit to this dog. How could a person submit to a dog? In the face of the cruel truth, they used self-paralysis and even self-deception to hold on to the delusion of turning the tables. Chu Yang was actually the one who was the least aware of this. That was why he was angry and felt that what he had done was far from enough. If he didn't kill these people, things would definitely go back to normal. If he couldn't suppress it, it would be the end of the Eastern Wilderness. Brother Lan, Brother Cao, Brother Chang, the 3 of you are responsible for blocking the phantoms of the 3 great emperors. The rest of you, follow me and kill this dog. Chapter 2166. The 10 saints were like 10 sacred suns, sparkling flowers of the great Tao. Following their killing intent, they turned into swords and swords, illuminating the dark world. This was the punishment of the great Tao, the killing intent of heaven and earth. When the saints were angry, heaven and earth would change. Their will was the will of heaven and earth. Chu Yang's face was expressionless. He had already seen the saints' shocking power and was not surprised. However, the killing intent in his heart surged endlessly. Today, he would use the blood of these 10 saints to establish the name of the Eastern Wilderness. Rumble. The 3 great emperor phantoms suddenly merged into one and shrunk to 9 feet, landing behind him. In an instant, the great emperor's aura turned from faint to dense, and a terrifying aura spread out. In an instant, the will of heaven and earth and the killing intent of the great Tao suddenly reversed. The sky full of swords and swords transformed from the great Tao turned around and slashed at the 10 saints. At the same time, the holy light on the 10 saints dimmed. Heaven and earth were fiercely repelling and suppressing them. It was clear that the void was separating and splitting. The 10 saints were imprisoned and were about to be exiled and erased. Heaven and earth were mountains and rivers, and the great Tao was the will of the people. In front of the great emperor, the saints were at most subjects, but in front of the great emperor, they were also subservient. If they disobeyed their superiors, they would be abandoned by their friends and family. The 10 saints of the 5 academies suddenly fell into such a situation. It was even more unbelievable that the wild dog had such a method to merge the 3 great emperor phantoms. If that was the case, Wouldn't the wild dog Chu also be able to merge the three great emperor phantoms? The wild dog in their eyes was so terrifying. They shuddered and felt their hair stand on end. In an instant, the 10 saints were like mice meeting a cat. Don't hold back anymore. Kill this dog. On Lu Lishua's old face, the pair of old eyes that were originally filled with contempt trembled in fear. His old body trembled as he roared. The wild dog needs time. We must kill him before that happens. This is not only a mad dog, but also a demon dog. Cao Jiwen, Lan Shoujie, and the others were completely terrified. They all went crazy and fought with all their might. Rumble. The void shattered, and a pitch-black space-time storm swept out. The 10 saints' power of repulsion and imprisonment was like a tiger released from its cage, and they lunged at Chu Yang with extreme speed. As soon as they escaped, the 10 of them seemed to have transformed into 10 beams of holy light, piercing through the dark heaven and earth, bursting out with dazzling light that drowned out everything. Those below the saint realm were instantly unable to see anything. This happened extremely quickly, but no one knew what had happened. Everyone could only hear the melodious sound of the bell, and then their vision completely recovered. The dazzling holy light disappeared, and a demonic bell appeared between the eyebrows of the 90-jong Great Emperor. The demonic bell surged with demonic aura, vibrating endlessly, and letting out melodious sounds of the bell. On the other side, the 10 sages stopped in front of Chu Yang. Their faces were pale and their legs were trembling. They were unable to take another step forward. When the devil bell appeared in everyone's eyes, they suddenly saw an emperor sitting on his throne. Below him, his ministers kowtowed and shouted, "Long live the emperor!" It was as if they could see the celestial emperor sitting high in the 9 heavens, looking down on all living beings. Bang! 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 Almost everyone immediately dropped to their knees and kowtowed to Chu Yang. Only Sima Jian, Sage Peng, Xia Jie, Shangguanlan, and a few others didn't. An animus armament. Xia Jie immediately lost his composure and cried out. As soon as he spoke, Lu Lishue and the other saints seemed to have confirmed something, and their aged bodies began to tremble uncontrollably. An animus armament. Chu Hang actually had an animus armament. His final trump card was actually a divine weapon used by a great emperor, a supreme treasure. Everyone in the East continent trembled. Xia Jie was scared out of his wits, and so were they. Chapter 2167. It's an emperor weapon. Although it's a damaged one, it's enough. Sage Rock looked at the 90-meter-tall Great Emperor's projection and the demonic bell. His heart was also in turmoil. Although the demonic bell was an emperor weapon, its power was not that terrifying. However, with the 90-meter-tall Great Emperor's projection, the combination of the two was almost equivalent to a great emperor in front of a living great emperor. What was a sage in front of a great emperor? Chu Yang had reached such a level. With so many tricks, he could possess the combat strength of a great emperor for a short period of time. I've underestimated him after all, Thousand Demon Sect leader Luo Cho said with a trembling voice. The 4 sages behind him were also petrified. Brother Goat, since when did you have an emperor weapon? Shangguanlan was also so shocked that her mouth was wide open. Her beautiful eyes looked at Chu Yang in disbelief. He was like a great emperor. At that moment, Liu Yunpeng, Xia Wanjin, Xiong Longxiang, Feng Polong, Zong Jian, and the others were completely speechless. Chu Yang had reached such a level. Was Chu Yang crazy? Was he arrogant? Not arrogant at all, not arrogant at all. With such means, Chu Yang's words and actions were very restrained. He was even more restrained than them. There was no trace of arrogance. What kind of bullshit was Chu Yang? He was just pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. The demonic bell stopped vibrating. Pure white soul energy broke through the air and surged into the demonic bell. Half of the demonic bell was bright, while the other half was like an abyss. Light figures and demonic projections constantly appeared on it. The map of the Eastern Wilderness and the Eastern Continent seemed to be imprinted on it. The demonic bell absorbed all the soul energy of the Eastern Wilderness people. Chu Yang was naturally aware of the pros and cons of soul energy, but he was not afraid. The demonic bell was engraved with the Tao patterns of the Darkness Devil Emperor and the Light Sovereign. Even if the spirit force of the people in the eastern wilderness turned into a curse one day, it wouldn't affect the demonic bell. At most, it would just be a transition between light and darkness. Furthermore, the demonic bell was originally an emperor weapon, but due to its nirvanic rebirth, it was temporarily damaged and had yet to reach the level of an emperor. It borrowed the spirit force of the people in the eastern wilderness to rush up. Once its realm was stabilized, even if this spirit force was in chaos, it wouldn't affect it too much. This was like an emperor who had borrowed the power of another power to restore his country. When he regained his throne and regained control of the country, when the empire became strong again, he would have great power. Naturally, he would not be afraid of the power he had borrowed. Chu Yang didn't dare to directly devour the spirit force of the people in the eastern wilderness. Although the transition between light and darkness on the demonic bell was his technique, he didn't take the risk to be cautious. The human heart was the most fickle. The people in the eastern wilderness were grateful, worshipping, and believing in him now. But in the future, who knew what would happen? Perhaps one day, he would become the target of the people in the eastern wilderness's curse. Are you satisfied? Chu Yang clasped his hands behind his back and looked coldly at Lu Lishue and the 10 saints. Also, I said that I was giving you face. Is there a problem? If there is a problem, why are you so afraid? Why are you trembling? Lu Lishue looked at Chu Yang in panic and suddenly said, "Wild dog, spare me." With a plop, he directly knelt down. Wild dog. Even at this time, he was still a wild dog. Unrepentant. The disgust in Chu Yang's heart surged upwards. With a thought, melodious bell sounds reverberated. The 9 great theatres behind him suddenly opened their mouths and sucked Lu Lishue in. With a whoosh, Lu Lishue was swallowed whole. Chapter 2168. Bang! Lu Lishue's body lay on the ground with his mouth open. His sunken eyes bulged out like 2 stone beads. A sage, the former leader of the Sky Academy, died just like that without being able to resist at all. Everyone below the sage level was an ant. In front of the great emperor, sages were also ants. Let's go. In the dead silence, Cao Jiwen, the former leader of the Sky Sword Academy, was the first to react. He broke free from the suppression of the demonic bell and rushed out, shouting at the same time. The older generation of the 5 academies controlled the younger generation. Since Lu Lishue was dead, Cao Jiwen was the one who gave orders. In an instant, the remaining 8 people moved together. In the blink of an eye, they had escaped far away. In the eyes of others, they had become black dots. Clang, clang, clang. The bell rang loudly. Rings of sound waves spread out, forming visible ripples. Then, they turned into 9 large hands of sound waves, grabbing in 9 directions. The 9 sages who had escaped were all caught in an instant. The 9 sages were like 9 fruits. They grabbed one and ate one. In the end, 3 of the fruits seemed to be rotten. They were directly thrown to the ground, making loud thuds. 6 dried corpses were immediately spat out by the 90 feet tall shadow. The 3 people who were still alive were Tuoba Ming, Guazil, and Duan Zhangming. Tuoba Ming was the leader of the Sky Sword Academy. Guazil and Duan Zhangming were the leaders of the Sky Demon Academy and the Divine Firmament Academy. The other 7 people were all dead and turned into dried corpses. In the end, Chu Yang did not kill the 3 people. Jing Wuming regarded me as his younger brother, so I should regard him as my elder brother. Chu Yang looked coldly at Guazil and Duan Zhangming and said coldly, "One of you is my elder brother's grandfather, and the other is my elder brother's grandfather. I won't kill you this time." But, Chu Yang paused for a moment. Then, he abruptly increased the intensity of his tone. It was extremely stern. "I don't care what you think. And, I don't care what you plan to do in the future. But, I will sever all ties with my elder brother when I find out that I need to kill you. Then, I will end your lives." Jing Wuming cared about their brotherhood. Chu Yang naturally had to care about it too. However, the battle between the Eastern Wilderness and the East Continent was not a child's play. After saying that, Chu Yang ignored the two people and immediately looked at the leader of the Sky Sword Academy, Tuoba Ming. What I said just now also applies to you. Tuoba Ming was naturally because of Feng Polong and Zong Jian. What Chu Yang did made Feng Polong and Zong Jian heave a sigh of relief. This was already the best result. They could not ask for more. Such a move also made many people in the East Continent feel at ease. Whether it was Jing Wuming, Feng Polong, or Zong Jian, they were all from the East Continent. Not only did Chu Yang not kill them, but he also gave them face. If you talk about friendship, I will also talk about friendship. If you are heartless, I will be ruthless. Compared with the three leaders of the Sky Sword Academy, the Sky Demon Academy, and the Divine Firmament Academy, the former and current leaders of the Sky Academy were worlds apart in the end. This was the best proof. Among them, although Chu Yang was a student of the Sky Academy, the two leaders of the Sky Academy were all dead in the end. Dang, dang, dang. The bell rang again. The Holy Master and the other heads of the 5 academies were all dead. This made the people in the East Continent feel anxious and uneasy. They also sighed. The heads of the 5 academies used to be so high and mighty, but now they were like chickens and dogs. After Chu Yang killed the masters of the 5 academies, he stopped and didn't make any more moves. This meant that everything was over. The tense atmosphere in this area also couldn't help but quietly relax. Demon King Chu did not intend to start a massacre. The people in the East Continent were completely relieved. Although this battle was not intense, and it was completely one-sided, the process was too dramatic, and the result was too shocking. Therefore, when everything ended, everyone felt a sense of relief. Chapter 2169. This is the center of the East Continent. It's called the Purple Chi East Coming Hall. All important matters of the East Continent will be discussed and decided here. Chu Yang's voice resounded clearly. If he wanted to do this, who would dare to stop him? Who could stop him? The East Continent must account for the blood debt of the Eastern Wilderness. Those who are stained with the blood of the Eastern Wilderness must die. The Sky Court, the Sky Sword Court, the Nature Court, the Sky Demon Court, the Divine Firmament Court, and the Star Court will be merged into the Purple Chi East Coming Hall. The Sky Court will be the main court, and the other 5 courts will be branch court. The 1,000 demonic sect, the Gongsun family, and the Purple Chi East Coming Hall will be in charge of the East Continent. Chu Fei of the Eastern Wilderness will be the first Hall Master of the Purple Chi East Coming Hall. Chu Yang issued one order after another. No one dared to disobey. When he finally left, the whole place was in an uproar. Among Chu Yang's orders, the most controversial one was that Chu Fei would be the first Hall Master of the Purple Chi East Coming Hall. Many people disagreed with this. If it was Chu Yang, there would be no problem. However, if it was Chu Yang's elder brother, Chu Fei, it would be difficult to convince others. However, Chu Yang did not care about this. He could only rest assured if he handed it over to his elder brother. He could not stay in the East Continent forever. He still had things to do. Naturally, he was also prepared. The demonic bell would stay in the East Continent to help his elder brother suppress all disagreement. Therefore, no matter what the people said, Chu Fei was the center of power in the East Continent. The first Hall Master of the Purple Chi East Coming Hall could not be changed. The result of the battle between Chu Yang and the 10 saints of the 5 academies, the various orders he issued, and the 1,000 demonic sect completely surrendered to Chu Yang. Many news spread quickly and swept through the entire East Continent. Immediately, there was a huge earthquake. No one could calm down. There were angry voices, cursing voices, and dissenting voices, but all of them were useless. As for the Eastern Wilderness, it was a scene of jubilation. They sang and danced as the day of their comeback had finally arrived. After suppressing the 5 academies, Chu Yang walked around the East Continent on the 2nd day. With the myriad demon sect and the people from the Eastern Wilderness, they practically traversed the entire East Continent in just one day. Those whose hands were stained with the blood of the people from the Eastern Wilderness were all slaughtered. This time, Chu Yang's might flourished even more. No one could stop him. Once again, He intimidated the East Continent and displayed the might of the Eastern wilderness. It immediately reduced the objections of the East Continent. After that, with Chu Yang's continuous actions, almost no one in the East Continent dared to play any tricks. They were all shocked by Chu Yang's ruthless means. Although Chu Yang's every action caused a huge commotion, it had little impact on the majority of the people in the East Continent. Therefore, the counterattack caused was also very small. In the end, although Chu Yang was domineering, his actions were very appropriate. He only killed those who deserved to be killed and those who could be convicted. He did not show any intention of oppressing the East Continent. Therefore, after 3 days, the East Continent almost universally acknowledged Chu Yang's ruling position in the East Continent. The focus of the discussion was no longer on what Chu Yang had done, but on the matter of Chu Fei becoming the first Hall Master of the Purple Qi East Arrival Hall. What virtue and ability does Chu Fei have to become the first Hall Master of the Purple Qi East Arrival Hall? If this Chu Fei wasn't the desolate Emperor Chu Yang, I wouldn't even know who he was. If I can't accept such a person as the first Hall Master, I'm afraid even more people won't accept it. Needless to say, Chu Fei is just SOSO. If he sits in this position, he probably won't be able to control the East Continent. I think the desolate Emperor is harming his brother. Chapter 2170. Why would the desolate Emperor do this? Only the desolate Emperor can suppress the East Continent. If it's not the desolate Emperor, who in the East Continent would submit to him? That's true, but I'm afraid the desolate Emperor has his own plans. Don't blindly kick up a fuss with those people from the East Continent. How is this kicking up a fuss? Think about it. Our Eastern wilderness depends on the desolate Emperor. If he leaves the East Continent and the East Continent counterattacks, won't we be finished? There were too many similar voices. The East Continent fell into an uproar. Chu Fei was being roasted on the fire. He came to see Chu Yang in the middle of the night. After hearing Chu Yang's plan, he could only accept it helplessly. Dang! Dang! On the 4th day, the sound of the demonic bell reverberated throughout the entire East Continent. Everyone in the East Continent could hear it, and they were all informed of the news. Chu Fei wielded the Emperor weapon demonic bell and became the first Hall Master of the Violet Qi East Arrival Hall. After the initial uproar in the East Continent, all dissenting voices quickly disappeared. Although many people were still dissatisfied, they could barely accept it if Chu Fei was in charge of the Emperor weapon. There was another reason that everyone had realized. Chu Yang would definitely leave the East Continent and head to the Central Continent. After this news was confirmed, it caused ripples in many people's hearts. Immediately, many people felt that this was an opportunity to seize the Emperor weapon and kill Chu Yang. Without the Emperor weapon, the demonic bell, Sage Peng, Sima Jian, Xia Jie, and the 5 saints of the Myriad Demon Sect, wouldn't it be a good opportunity for Chu Yang to set up an ambush on his way to the Central Continent? To many people, this was an irresistible temptation. Although some people clearly knew that Chu Yang was likely to lure the snake out of its hole and eliminate the enemy in the dark, they still couldn't resist the urge to attack. For example, Qian Zi. With the appearance of the Emperor artifact demonic bell, Qian Zi had already given up on killing Chu Yang. However, when he confirmed this news, his original idea sprouted again. He was so excited that he couldn't control himself. Therefore, after a discussion with the venomous serpent, he immediately started the original plan again. He gathered all the sages hiding in the East Continent and even in the Central Continent to set up an ambush and kill Chu Yang. Of course, Qian Zi was not the only one who had such thoughts. Those people and forces in the East Continent who were unwilling to give up were also attracted. They gathered together to discuss countermeasures to assassinate Chu Yang. The East Continent once again became restless. It looked calm on the surface, but there were turbulent undercurrents. However, as long as Chu Yang was in the East Continent, they could only lie low and wait. The news of Chu Yang ruling the East Continent quickly spread to the Central Continent. When those admirers of Shangguan Lan in the Central Continent heard this, their faces turned ashen. For example, the Kong family's Kong Jingsha and the first prince of the Central Continent divine dynasty. However, They didn't dare to act rashly. Chu Yang had the Emperor artifact demonic bell in his hand, so they could only wait for Chu Yang to leave the East Continent. Duke Ju's residence. Duke Ju returned after 6 days. The old servant immediately reported the news of the East Continent. Young master, something interesting happened in the East Continent again? Something interesting? Duke Ju didn't think so. Is there anything more shocking than that little bastard using the sages of the god world to kill the 18 sages of the central continent? It seems like it can be even more shocking, or at least comparable. The old servant smiled and said, Young master, don't you know when you see it? That's true. I'd like to see what that little bastard is up to this time. After Duke Ju checked the news of the East Continent, he was stunned. He didn't say anything for a long time. The secret hidden in his heart couldn't help but surge out. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, Emperor Artifact, the imprints of 3 great emperors. Just who is he? Could he be one of those people? Chapter 2171. The Sky Academy. No, it should be called the Purple Chi East Academy. The name Purple Chi East Academy seemed appropriate, but it was definitely not the best. There should be a better name, but Chu Yang was too lazy to think about it. He had once built the East Arrival Pavilion in the Eastern Wilderness, so he added 2 words in front of it and put it on. Chu Yang had pacified the Gongsun family, the Star Academy, and finally used the Emperor weapon to suppress the Sky Academy and the 5 academies, thus unifying the East Continent. After that, he made Big Brother the first Hall Master of the Purple Chi East Academy. The commotion caused was still ongoing even after half a month. Compared to the people of the East Continent, the people of the Eastern Wilderness were almost silent. They were just wildly celebrating. This was the result they had been waiting for a long time. It came so suddenly that most of them were caught off guard. It was like a dream. After all, many of them had never thought of such a thing before. Even those who worked hard for it never thought that it would come so quickly and so fiercely. For example, the 6th granduncle of the Barren Village and the people of the Barren Village were very clear about when Chu Yang came to the East Continent from the East Continent. However, the status of the East Continent in the East Continent was completely different after such a short time. The sun and moon of the East Continent had changed. The people of the Barren Village and the 6th great uncle were extremely shocked. No matter what, the humiliation and depression of the people of the Eastern Wilderness were completely released this time. Not only did they turn the tables, but they also held their heads high. Even if the people of the East Continent wanted to laugh at them now, they did not have the right to do so. Looking at mountains all day long, not tired of mountains, buying mountains to stay in old mountains. The flowers of the mountains fade, the mountains grow, the mountains and rivers empty, the mountains idle. The Violet Chi East Arrival Courtyard was a mountain peak that pierced the heavens like a sharp sword. It was extremely steep and lush with verdant greenery. Looking down from the top of the mountain, the newly built Violet Chi East Arrival Hall could be seen in one's eyes. Rushing in and out of it, figures could be seen everywhere. It seemed to be the busiest place in the world. Occasionally, curses could be heard coming from the temple. Anyone who was close to Chu Yang would know that it was the voice of a parrot. The parrot had fallen into Chu Yang's trap, and had become the deputy palace master. It was so busy that its feet didn't touch the ground all day long. Therefore, it was madly cursing Chu Yang endlessly. Chu Fei and Sima Jian's faces darkened every time they heard this. Other than that, Feng Polong and Zong Jian were also in the main hall. They were all forcefully assigned a position by Chu Yang and suppressed inside. Jing Wuming was also present, and he had not been able to escape either. Chu Yang had actually dared to use an emperor weapon to detain him and deal with these trivial matters. He even had the heart to kill Chu Yang. Chu Yang was calmly lying on a large flattened rock on the peak of the mountain. He was listening to the faint cursing of the parrot. He was feeling the gentle breeze blowing by. Moreover, a few rays of sunlight were sprinkling down on him. He was feeling very good. He had been lying lazily like this, not wanting to move at all, not even a finger. It was a rare moment of peace, a rare moment of leisure, and he enjoyed it greatly. This was the most relaxed and relaxing day he had ever had since he entered the East Continent. In the past, such simple enjoyment had become a kind of luxury, a great luxury. Perhaps it was only after experiencing so many things that Chu Yang was able to realize the preciousness of this moment. A gentle breeze blew over. What was different from the past was that this time, the breeze brought with it a wisp of intoxicating fragrance. Shangguan Lan was dressed in a purple dress. She looked elegant and noble. She quietly came to Chu Yang's side. At this moment, there was no one by her side, and Xiao Guori was not there. In Chu Yang's words, this was a rare time for the two of them. After she arrived, she could not help but stare at that handsome face. Suddenly, her delicate nose could not help but let out a snort. Chu Yang knew that she had come, but he pretended not to know. Chapter 2172. It was very itchy. Chu Yang still kept his eyes closed. Shangguan Lan pouted, "Brother Yang, I'll see how long you can endure it. You're not allowed to use your cultivation." After saying that, she smiled. It was rare for her to have the mentality of a little girl. She could only be like this when she was with Chu Yang. In the past, she always had to maintain a dignified appearance because there were too many eyes staring at her. But this kind of time was too short. Shangguan Lan seemed to think of something, and her face could not help but show a touch of sadness. Lan, I'm not surrendering. It's just that I feel a great loss if I don't see you for a second. It's a loss. My heart hurts. If you don't believe me, you can touch it. Chu Yang smiled as he opened his eyes. He looked at the dreamy girl in front of him. She was so beautiful that she seemed unreal. He grinned and suddenly stretched out his arm. He tried to sneak an attack on her slender waist. He tried to pull her into his arms. Shangguan Lan seemed to have been prepared. She floated away like mist, and then said with a smile on her flawless face, "Brother Yang, didn't you hear little bitch scolding? It's about to explode. Isn't little bitch going to be the deputy temple master? I'm just helping it." Chu Yang thought of the parrot and suddenly felt happy. Seeing Chu Yang not wanting to move, Shangguan Lan suddenly felt an inexplicable heartache. She saw the hardships behind Chu Yang's laziness. How hard did Chu Yang have to work to pacify the East Continent and steal half a day of leisure? In her mind, she was thinking about all the dangers that Chu Yang might experience and all the problems that he might face. Her clear eyes were filled with endless gentleness. "Brother Yang, you've done very well. Don't push yourself too much. Are you kidding? Who do you think I am? I'm invincible and lonely. It's easy for me to do anything." Chu Yang naturally knew what Shangguan Lan was talking about. Such a woman who was so considerate of him filled his heart with tenderness. "Brother Goat, do you have to keep pretending to be relaxed in front of me?" Shangguan Lan's tenderness and gentleness could melt any man with a heart of stone in an instant. "Brother Goat, you are already very outstanding. When you were fearless in front of the 10 saints of the 5 academies, you made me feel infinite pride." As Chu Yang listened to this gentle and sweet-sounding voice, the mischievous smile on the corners of his mouth quietly changed into a happy smile. For a man, there was nothing more beautiful than the praise of his woman. Lan. Shangguan Lan replied with a smile. "Kiss me." Chu Yang suddenly played dirty again. Although Shangguan Lan dodged, her pretty face was slightly red, and then she said shyly, "I don't want it." "I want it." Chu Yang pounced on her again. Suddenly, a soft and fragrant body was in his arms. When he wrapped his arms around the girl's soft waist, he also pushed her to the ground and pressed her under his body. However, Chu Yang did not take any further action. He just closed his eyes and smelled the girl's scent with an intoxicated expression. Shangguan Lan's face was completely red. She pounded her small fists and said shyly, "Brother Goat, you're a bad guy." Chu Yang's bones were soft and he almost could not restrain himself. However, he did not mess around. He just looked at the delicate face. It was so beautiful that he could not help but be a little dazed. She said that she was pretending. How could she not be pretending? Being watched all day long, she was probably very tired. Those things in Zhongzhou. Chu Yang could not help but secretly say. Shangguan Lan had already closed her eyes, waiting for Chu Yang to violate her. However, the violation did not come. She could not help but open her eyes and saw a handsome face that seemed to be in deep thought. Chapter 2173. Shangguan Lan couldn't help biting her rosy lips with her pearly white teeth, showing an infatuated look. She liked Chu Yang's smile the most, and Chu Yang's evil and naughty smile made her heart beat wildly. Lan, are you going back to the central province soon? Chu Yang stroked Shangguan Lan's jade-like cheek and asked softly. The girl under him trembled slightly, and her beautiful eyes dimmed in an instant. She found that Chu Yang was thinking a lot, so she was keenly aware of it. Shangguan Lan looked at Chu Yang's face and murmured, "Brother Yang, this time it's too big. If I follow you all the time, you'll be under too much pressure." As she spoke, she bit her red lips with her pearly white teeth, and soon her eyes turned slightly red. She naturally knew what Chu Yang was going to face. The road ahead was full of thorns and bumps, and she didn't know how much danger and sadness he would experience during this period. After all, there were too many geniuses in this world, especially in the central province. It was not enough to just be a genius. Chu Yang's heart ached, and he suddenly said, Lan, aren't you looking down on me too much? But Shangguan Lan's expression was still sad. He stopped exaggerating and said seriously, Lan, believe me, one day in the central province, I'll definitely become a peerless master, and I'll do whatever I want for you. After a pause, he soon became playful again. No, it should be like this, Lan. One day I'll ride a 7-colored cloud to the central province to marry you. Shangguan Lan was finally amused, and her beautiful face couldn't help but smile. Brother Yang, I'll wait for you. However, she was also a little annoyed. She was moved, but Chu Yang didn't even give her time to be moved. In addition, Chu Yang was caught off guard, and he bit her rosy lips. A cool breeze blew. Shangguan Lan held back her shyness, and her jade-like arms wrapped around Chu Yang's neck. In the following days, Chu Yang and Shangguan Lan were almost inseparable, sticking together and enjoying the time together, talking about all kinds of things, no matter how big or small. But as the days passed, Shangguan Lan's mood slowly became depressed, although she was amused by Chu Yang every time. On this day, Shangguan Lan and Chu Yang strolled in the purple Qi East courtyard, admiring the sunset on the horizon. Suddenly, Shangguan Lan's jade-like hands trembled slightly. Chu Yang immediately sensed it. He knew that the time of separation was coming. But he didn't feel dejected. Lan, be good. Chu Yang hugged Shangguan Lan's slender waist in front of everyone, but Shangguan Lan did not struggle, which was rare. When Shangguan Lan's eyes, Shangguan Lan's, and Lan's beauties' beautiful ses look. Then, Lan SSS, and then SSTS, then, a space door formed from the vortex. At this moment, such a movement alarmed many people in the purple Qi East courtyard. They saw a huge brilliance rushing out of the space door, shuttling through the void, and arriving above the purple Qi East courtyard in the blink of an eye. Soon after, the sky darkened and a huge shadow was cast. A stalwart figure that seemed to cover the sky had already appeared in the sky. The whole purple Qi East courtyard shook. Sima Jian, Jing Wuming, Chu Fei, and the others were all alarmed and flew out. Dang! The demonic bell also rang. After sensing Chu Yang's, it slowly calmed down. From Shangguan Lan's expression, Chu Yang already knew that such a figure was going to take Shangguan Lan back to the central province. The person's strength had reached the great emperor realm, and he was a supreme existence. Chapter 2174. Above the sky, as soon as the supreme figure arrived, auspicious clouds appeared, and the sound of the great Tao resounded. The heavenly palace appeared, and within it, a supreme figure came out from the deepest part of the heavenly palace to welcome him. At this moment, the East continent seemed to be solemnly welcoming the arrival of the supreme figure. The auspicious clouds were the splendid attire of the heavenly palace, and the sound of the great Tao was the welcoming music. The figure in the deepest part of the heavenly palace was the heavenly emperor of the East continent, and he personally came out to welcome him. The supreme figure that blotted out the sky quickly returned to his normal figure, and all kinds of strange phenomena disappeared. His appearance was also revealed. Immediately, everyone in the Eastern Purple Aura courtyard turned to look at him. This was an extremely refined middle-aged man. He wore a white Confucian robe and looked cultured and refined. However, there was a murderous aura and an iron-blooded killing intent that surged out from him. It intimidated the minds of everyone present. Everyone's heart palpitated, and they couldn't help but be in awe. They were so careful in front of him, as if they were treading on thin ice. The scholarly middle-aged man's face was very fair, and his facial features were like that of an army camp, neat and tidy, with clear hierarchy and strict security. The sharp eyes on them were the guards and scouts of the army. As they scanned the enemy, they seemed to have seen through everything. He seemed to be a scholarly general. Not only did he have the elegance of a scholar, but he also had the determination and decisiveness of a general, and his majesty was as deep as an abyss. The East Violet Chi courtyard was completely silent, and it was as quiet as a prison of death. Not to mention the ordinary people, even Sima Jian, Jing Wuming, and the others looked up at the scholarly figure in the sky. When they felt the aura emitted from him, their faces couldn't help but turn pale, and their hearts were filled with reverence. How powerful was this person who suddenly appeared? Great Emperor, this is a real great emperor, a living great emperor. Chu Yang certainly felt this astonishing pressure, and he even knew that the other party had tried his best to restrain his aura. Otherwise, everyone, including Sima Jian and Jing Wuming, would have been forced to kneel down and worship him. At this moment, he also thoroughly felt the majesty of a great emperor. This was completely different from when he challenged the sovereign in the world of gods. Back then, he had only faced the will of the sovereign, not his true body. In the strange world, the aura Chu Yang felt was even more terrifying and unimaginable, but it was also very vague and general. It was not as specific and clear as it was now. It could be said that what he felt in the past was only the tip of the iceberg of those supreme existences. But now, he saw the entire iceberg. The entire world of ice and snow felt completely different. Most likely, none of the people in the Eastern Purple Chi courtyard had ever seen a true great emperor. In the distant sky, the space that was torn apart by the supreme figure did not immediately close up. Surging blood chi rushed out from within, and then rumbling sounds could be heard. Then, an iron-blooded killing intent swept out like a tsunami. In the blink of an eye, the sky and earth turned blood red, and the phantom image of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood appeared. The tragic battlefield after the battle between the two armies quickly spread out. Rumble. Chapter 2175. What an amazing murderous aura. Chu Yang was startled again. This murderous aura swept over. He felt as if an army had broken through a city, and the enemy had rushed in. Everyone was like unarmed civilians. They were helpless, powerless, and frightened. They could only wait for the fate of being slaughtered. Rumble. The heavens and the earth rumbled again. Then, everyone saw a group of armored soldiers riding horses charge out of the spatial door and gather behind the elegant middle-aged man in an orderly manner. This group of armored soldiers were all dressed in silver armor branded with profound lines. They all held huge silver spears in their hands, and the horses they rode were all snow-white. After they arrived, they were silent and very solemn, which made their murderous aura even more amazing when it swept out. At this time, everyone was shocked to find that this group of armored soldiers was only 100 people, but when they rode their horses, they had the terrifying momentum of a magnificent army. Strict discipline, strict obedience. These words immediately came to Chu Yang's mind. He couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "What an army!" He looked at these 100 armored soldiers as if he were facing millions of lions. The image of a golden army appeared in his mind. In an instant, he was very sure that these knights on the white horses must have often wandered between life and death. He probably didn't know how many life and death battles they had experienced. This was a real army, an invincible army. Every one of them had experienced hundreds of battles, and they were all killing gods on the battlefield. If this group of 100 people attacked the East Continent would be wiped out in an instant, and there would be no resistance at all. Chu Yang's face became more and more dignified. Each of this group of armored soldiers had the cultivation of a sage, and even those white horses were almost at the sage realm. How terrible the power was. Was this the person who came to pick up Shangguan? A show of strength. Chu Yang's heart was turbulent. The intention of the other party was to let him see the horror of the central province, so that he could recognize his weakness. However, he was almost unable to refute, because he had to admit that the East Continent could not be compared with the Central Province, just as the Eastern Wilderness could not be compared with the East Continent. The world was silent. After this mysterious group of people appeared, no one made a sound. Chu Yang didn't say anything either. The Violet Chi Eastern Approaches courtyard was even more silent. Such a group of people had fiercely intimidated the entire Violet Chi Eastern Approaches courtyard. In an instant, who knew how many people felt ashamed of their inferiority and admitted that they were inferior. They also realized how lowly and insignificant they were. Jing Wuming was originally like a walking corpse. However, at this moment, an extremely dignified expression appeared on his face. He gripped the hilt of his sword so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Sima Jian also frowned deeply. The anxiety and worry on his face was obvious, and at the same time, he was also extremely cautious. Neither the scholarly middle-aged man nor the group of armored soldiers reacted to the vigilance and hostility of the two men. Just like that, the stalemate continued until the scholarly middle-aged man finally moved. He glanced at Sima Jian and Jing Wuming before his gaze landed on a young girl. The young girl was slender and elegant, growing more and more beautiful, and also more and more beautiful. At this moment, the young girl's beautiful face was also looking at him calmly. The two men's eyes met for a brief moment. The scholarly middle-aged man smiled. Then, his line of sight suddenly fell on Chu Yang's body. Dong. Chapter 2176. At the same time, an extremely shocking pressure, as if it was real, and more like two divine swords, pierced through the space and flew over. Dong. Dong. The ground under Chu Yang's feet shook violently and then collapsed silently. Smoke and dust soared into the sky, completely submerging the place in an instant. Everything was under control. Except for Chu Yang, the other places were not affected at all. It was as if Chu Yang had been teleported to another space-time. Chu Yang's figure disappeared. Many people thought that he had already died without a complete corpse and turned into ashes. But after a while, a rainbow burst forth from that place. It was as if a multicolored divine sun had risen. Then, they finally saw it clearly. Within the multicolored divine sun, a slender figure appeared. His entire body was sparkling and translucent. He was suspended in mid-air, and the ground under his feet had turned into an abyss. The abyss was being filled up at a speed visible to the naked eye, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. What kind of mighty power and divine ability was this? No one could describe such means. They thought that it was a miracle that Chu Yang was still alive, a miracle of miracles. Shangguan Lan frowned. Just as she was about to make a move, she suddenly felt a large, warm hand grabbing her slender hand and pulling her back. Then, she saw Chu Yang's bright smile and his 8 white teeth. Silence was better than word. Shangguan Lan completely understood Chu Yang's meaning. However, she could not even hold his gaze, so what else could she say? If she needed to shelter him from the wind and rain on their first meeting, wouldn't she be looked down upon? No matter if he was strong or weak, as a man, he must have the courage to face her family and not let her have a conflict with them. However, although Chu Yang was smiling brightly, it was not easy to deal with the pressure from the Great Emperor. The pressure from the Great Emperor was too terrifying. He could not resist it even with the light soul and the demon soul. In the end, he had no choice but to use the Destiny Twins' martial soul to trigger the imprints of the Great Emperor, the heaven-devouring Great Emperor, the Star Lord, and the Dark Demon Emperor to direct the pressure into the 100 heavenly abodes. Within the 100 heavenly abodes, there was a strange world's cauldron suppressing it. The Great Emperor could not destroy it, but the impact was extremely terrifying. The pressure on Chu Yang's body was beyond imagination. His back was covered in cold sweat, and his body was numb. There was even a period of time when he could not move an inch. Is this the great emperor's pressure? I've experienced it. Chu Yang clenched his teeth and endured it. This wasn't even a test from the other party. The other party had only glared at him fiercely to vent the resentment in his heart. Ka. The refined middle-aged man kept looking at Chu Yang. His teeth began to chatter, and the bones in his body began to creak. His face was red, and his neck was thick. His veins were like dragons, popping out. However, no matter what, Chu Yang did not avoid the gaze of the great emperor. However, he was in a predicament. His weakness and powerlessness were obvious. He was pitiful and ugly. What was even more tragic was that the great emperor's pressure was only a part of it. Even if he used the demonic bell, it would be useless. The one in front of him was a true great emperor. Brother Yang. Shangguan Lan was anxious. However, when she saw Chu Yang's teeth chattering and body trembling, his body was still as straight as a javelin, she had no choice but to swallow all the words she wanted to say. She turned her beautiful eyes away from Chu Yang, and glared fiercely at that scholarly middle-aged man. It seemed as if she wanted to kill that scholarly middle-aged man. Chapter 2177. No one knew how much time had passed, but the scholarly middle-aged man's expression didn't change. Finally, he opened his mouth and said, "You don't seem to be as bad as I thought. You're okay." His voice came from the sky. It was neither fast nor slow, and it was extremely magnetic. It was a voice that could mesmerize women. Along with this voice, all the pressure disappeared. Chu Yang immediately felt as if he had escaped from hell. However, his body was soft, and he almost collapsed. Behind the middle-aged man were two armored soldiers who were closest to him. These two men were about 27 or 28 years old. They were heroic and had extraordinary temperaments. There was an iron-blooded murderous aura between their eyebrows. Their eyes were closed, and they looked like two asuras with their eyes closed. In the small team of 100 people, when the soldiers at the back looked at the backs of these two men, they couldn't help but show admiration and respect. Obviously, these two men were not only terrifying, but also admirable. Not bad. After these two heard Chu Yang's evaluation, their closed eyes suddenly opened. They couldn't help but look at Chu Yang. There was a look of surprise on their faces. Not bad, this evaluation is already very high. At this time, the two men were definitely not the only ones who thought so. The soldiers behind them definitely thought so as well. Anyone who knew this scholarly middle-aged man would definitely think so too. Shio, along with the sound of breaking air, a light figure suddenly appeared in the distance. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Chu Yang. However, he didn't come close. He crossed his arms and laughed as he watched Chu Yang's embarrassed expression. The Xia family's saint, Xia Jie. Xia Jie naturally came to watch the show. He also came to see Chu Yang make a fool of himself. For example, now. Without a doubt, Chu Yang would definitely be defeated by the people of the central province. The scholarly middle-aged man just glanced at Xia Jie and then ignored him. He didn't even say anything. The soldiers behind did the same. They all ignored Xia Jie's existence. Xia Jie didn't care. He didn't feel humiliated or angry at all. Instead, he respectfully said to the scholarly middle-aged man, "Xia Jie greets the White Horse Great Emperor. You've got the wrong person." The scholarly middle-aged man immediately showed an unhappy expression. "Greetings, General White Horse." Feeling vexed, Xia Jie immediately corrected himself and apologized. "I misspoke just now. Please forgive me, General Bai." The scholarly middle-aged man couldn't be bothered with Xia Jie. He only nodded and didn't reply. This shocked everyone. Xia Jie was a top-notch saint. Xia Jie didn't say anything else, nor did he look displeased. Whoosh. This time, it was Sage Peng. The only difference was that the scholarly middle-aged man immediately cupped his fists when he saw Sage Peng. "Brother Peng, long time no see." This not only surprised Chu Yang, but also Xia Jie. "Brother Shangguan, long time no see." Rock Sage cupped his fists in return. This scene immediately made the people of Purple Chi comes from the east secretly breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, Someone had arrived who could somewhat resist a little. Is Brother Rock unable to stand it? The scholarly middle-aged man clearly knew of the relationship between Chu Yang and Rock Sage. What do you think? Sage Peng immediately became indifferent. Even if the other party was a great emperor, he wouldn't be polite. Chu Yang was even more surprised. He thought to himself, this cheap grandfather of mine isn't as simple as he seems on the surface. In fact, Xie Jie was even more shocked. Sage Peng was also a top-notch saint like him. Although Sage Peng's reputation was much higher than his, he was still a saint. But why was General Whitehorse afraid of Sage Peng? Of course not. Shangguan Xiao smiled faintly. He didn't seem angry at all. He acted as if Sage Peng had the qualifications to be on the same level as him. Of course not. Chapter 2178. Then why are you here, Brother Peng? Naturally, I'm here for you. No one could hear what Sage Peng and the middle-aged man said. Chu Yang only saw the middle-aged man's expression become more and more solemn. In the end, he cupped his fists towards Sage Peng. After that, Sage Peng left directly. After the middle-aged man pondered for a while, the space fluctuated slightly. He took a step and went straight in front of Shangguan Lan and Chu Yang. Lan, you've been out for too long. It's time to go back with your uncle. The middle-aged man looked at Shangguan Lan with a doting look in his eyes. He had no intention of saying anything to Chu Yang. He was completely testing Chu Yang's plan. It seemed that what he had just done was enough. Lan's uncle? Chu Yang couldn't get angry. He could only endure the contempt shown by the middle-aged man. After all, the other party was an elder. Shangguan Lan naturally understood all of this. She wanted to say something and do something, but in the end, she didn't do anything. Her uncle's contempt for Chu Yang would eventually happen. Of course, she could intervene, but she knew that Chu Yang definitely didn't want this to happen. Chu Yang had to prove himself to her uncle or her family. She could only bite her red lips with her pearly white teeth. Her beautiful eyes revealed a pained expression. Lan, let's go, the middle-aged man said softly. The two young men behind him had already stared coldly at Chu Yang because Shangguan Lan was already staring at him. Shangguan Lan nodded her head with difficulty. Her steps were light, but her footsteps were heavy and slow. Her eyes were filled with heartbreaking gloom, except for the worry in them. Chu Yang's heart trembled. Although he was already prepared, when he saw Shangguan Lan's sad expression, the palms in his sleeves couldn't help but clench into fists. If he was already strong enough and she didn't want to leave his side, who would dare to force her to leave? Why would she have to worry about all these things? In the end, he was still too weak. Chu Yang had already tried his best to improve his cultivation, but he still encountered such powerlessness every time. He didn't want to experience such powerlessness again. He hoped that this was the last time. He took a deep breath and suddenly broke into a smile. Lan, before we leave, can you not introduce this pretentious guy? Shangguan Lan was taken aback when she heard this. Chu Yang scratched his hair and winked at Shangguan Lan, revealing a you-know expression. Then, he suddenly said embarrassedly, Lan, in the end, you have to meet your 8th uncle, 9th uncle, 18th aunt, and 38th aunt. The task is very difficult. Why don't you settle one first? Besides, this uncle you speak of, from his scholarly appearance, I can immediately tell that he is a gentleman sword cultivator. Moreover, he has already cultivated his divine arts to an extremely high level. When Shangguan Lan saw Chu Yang raise his lotus-shaped fingers and make a feminine gesture, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. She was trying to scold her uncle as a hypocrite and had already castrated herself. She was the only one who could understand, because she was the only one Chu Yang had ever told that story to. She couldn't help but glare at Chu Yang. How could he talk about her uncle like that? All of Shangguan Lan's sadness was swept away. The corners of the scholarly middle-aged man's mouth twitched imperceptibly, and he thought to himself, this guy is really something. He also keenly heard from Shangguan Lan's expression that Chu Yang's words were definitely not good, but he couldn't find anything to use against him, so he couldn't do anything. Brother Yang, this is my uncle. Shangguan Lan said with endless joy. The two handsome young men behind the scholarly middle-aged man had never seen her before, and they were immediately stunned. Chapter 2179. Uncle is often called the White Horse General, or the ever-victorious General, Changshan Zhao Zilong. After Shangguan Lan said that, Chu Yang's eyes instantly widened like copper bells. That look made Shangguan Lan laugh again. Of course, she also knew Changshan Zhao Zilong. As for this elegant middle-aged man, Chu Yang naturally knew about him. His surname was Shangguan and his name was Xiao. Shangguan Xiao was dressed in white clothes and silver armor and rode a white horse. In the years of war between the heavenly soul realm and the divine realm, he had won many battles and had a remarkable record. He really had some of the style of Changshan Zhao Zilong. In a great battle, he rescued the captured 7th prince alone and had never been defeated. From Shangguan Xiao's information, Chu Yang also learned that in the central region, the war between the heavenly soul realm and the divine realm seemed to have never stopped, and that was the main battlefield of the war between the two realms. In general, Shangguan Lan's uncle was a very extraordinary person. This period of time was very short. When the parting came again, Shangguan Lan smiled with tears in her eyes as she bid farewell to Chu Yang. She had already walked halfway, but she suddenly stopped. Then she suddenly turned around and pounced directly into Chu Yang's arms. Her jade-like arms hugged Chu Yang tightly. Chu Yang felt a burst of guilt in his heart. How shy was Shangguan Lan? At this moment, she actually threw herself into his arms in front of others. This was simply unimaginable before. However, the only thing he could do now was to hug the girl in his arms tightly. This scene made Chu Fei, Jing Wuming, Feng Polong, and Zong Jian feel a little sad. Shangguan Xiao was also very surprised. Shangguan Lan's actions caught him off guard. It was really not good for a girl to do this. But in the end, he still didn't say anything. He just quietly watched the scene in front of him. Chu Yang hugged Shangguan Lan and said softly in her ear, "Lan Lan, it won't be long. Just treat it as a trip back to your mother's home. And next time, if you don't want to leave, who can make you leave? Not even a dog's fart." His voice was filled with confidence and determination, as well as unruly arrogance. Shangguan Lan's beautiful eyes were filled with tears. She raised her head and looked at Chu Yang. She nodded but didn't say anything because she didn't need to say anything. Chu Yang would definitely do it. She just didn't know how many hardships he would have to go through and what she couldn't imagine. She let go of Chu Yang and quickly turned around. With a swish, she flew past Shangguan Xiao but was stopped by Chu Yang. "Lan Lan, wait." Chu Yang said to Lil Guari and the parrot, Lil Guari, go to Central State and follow your sister-in-law. Take care of her for me. Chu Hang, I protest." The parrot was thoroughly enraged. Chu Yang's dead Dao friend didn't die, so this poor Dao came again. Yah. Little Guari was also a little reluctant. Chu Yang smiled and directly said to Shangguan Lan, "Lan Lan, suppress them." Shangguan Lan couldn't help but smile again. Then, she thought of Little Guari and a doting look appeared on her face. She said to Little Guari, come here." Little Guari reluctantly went over, and then the parrot was directly suppressed by Shangguan Lan. "I say, sister-in-law, you can't learn from Chu Hang. I protest. This divine bird protests. This is buying and selling a divine bird. This is a big crime. Sister-in-law, why are you more and more like Chu Hang are?" Amid the parrot's protests and screams, Shangguan Lan left, and her figure quickly disappeared in the space-time gate. With Shangguan Lan's departure, Shangguan Xiao looked at Chu Yang for the first time. He had to admit that the boy in front of him could always make his niece smile through tears. Just like in the end, Shangguan Lan's sorrow was almost gone. However, this was not enough. Chapter 2180. A cool breeze blew gently, and the clouds in the sky moved. A black cloud slowly and lazily floated over, casting a shadow. Chu Yang was in this shadow, while Shangguan Xiao was outside of it. It seemed that the two of them were in two different worlds, and their views were also completely different. The wind seemed to be completely the same, blowing their long hair and the corners of their clothes. The surroundings suddenly became completely silent, not a single sound could be heard. Countless gazes landed on the two of them. Should I say something? With Shangguan Xiao's words, even a slow-witted person should be able to detect something. Not far away, Chu Fei looked at this scene and frowned. He looked even more worried. This was another test for Chu Yang. Jing Wuming noticed Chu Fei's worry. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Don't worry. He's our little brother. So what if he's in the central province?" It was a very arrogant remark. However, Chu Fei immediately smiled and said, "That's true. Wasn't the East Province an uncrossable mountain range before? What about now? The Central Province might not be able to stop his brother." Boom. At this moment, Chu Fei and Jing Wuming immediately felt a violent fluctuation. Immediately, they saw the two young men behind Chu Yang move and rush toward him like two streams of flowing light. This seemed to be what Shangguan Xiao wanted to say. Buzz. Buzz. The void vibrated and immediately two streams of angry intent gushed out. Swish. In an instant, two streams of light burst out. They arrived in front of Chu Yang and faced the two young men. Get lost. The two young men's endless killing intent surged out. They held their silver spears tightly in their hands and stabbed out. Instantly, the void turned blood red, as if it had turned into a charaba. In the silence, a sword light and a saber light burst out. They ignored their own defense, their own lives, and the two silver spears and directly chopped at the two young men. This was a suicidal attack. That piece of space crumbled apart. The two young men, who had been through hundreds of battles and had been on the verge of death, quickly stopped themselves and immediately retreated to avoid the attacks. Swish. The sword light and the saber light directly chopped down and landed in the air. There was no burst of energy, but the void was cut open like a piece of paper and a void storm immediately swept out. The sword light illuminated the 9 heavens and the saber chi swept across. Both of them were extremely fierce. Sima Jian's sword and Jing Wuming's saber. The two young men could not help but be surprised. It was not only because of Sima Jian and Jing Wuming's reckless attacks, but also because their sword and saber techniques were very good. "I said to get lost. Didn't you understand?" Me. Lifeless Thorn snorted coldly. "You want to touch my little brother in front of me?" Sima Jian did not say anything. He replied with his sword and was about to chop at them again. He was completely defenseless and wanted to destroy them both. Shangguan Xiao looked at all this indifferently. Soon after, he sneered at Chu Yang and said, "Desperate? Are you trying to tell me that you are desperate? But you are too naive. You are not the only one who is desperate. Many people will be desperate." As soon as he opened his mouth, Sima Jian was immediately suppressed and could not attack. The two young men did not dare to attack again. Chapter 2181. Chu Yang's sarcastic expression was calm. He stepped on the ground under his feet and said, "Are you trying to tell me that there is never a lack of ambitious people who are willing to risk their lives? Sorry, you don't have the ability to make me risk my life." Whether it was Jing Wuming or Sima Jian's death, he couldn't accept it. He was angry and willful. Shangguan Xiao's eyes narrowed. He stared coldly at Chu Yang for a moment. Seeing that the other party wasn't afraid, he said, "You're Chu Yang, right?" "I'm Chu Yang of the Eastern Wilderness." Chu Yang replied clearly. "You're proud of the Eastern Wilderness?" Shangguan Xiao couldn't help but mock. "Tell me why I'm not proud." Chu Yang sharply retorted, "It seems that you're not that great either. Even if a home was a kennel, it was still a home. No one would despise their home. There was no distinction between nobility and nobility in a home, and no one's home was nobler than another's." Shangguan Xiao felt Chu Yang's contempt for him. "You're arrogant. You're arrogant. You're really arrogant. You're really arrogant." Chu Yang used childish means again, but his reasoning wasn't childish. Shangguan Xiao felt that Chu Yang was arrogant because he was looking down on Chu Yang. Chu Yang's every move could be seen as disrespectful, and thus arrogant. "I have the right to be arrogant." Shangguan Xiao finally realized that Chu Yang was difficult to deal with. Facing a great emperor like him, He wasn't afraid at all and even wanted to be on equal footing with him. I have the ability to be arrogant. Chu Yang went tit for tat again. It seems that I need to let you see reality clearly. Shangguan Xiao couldn't help but feel a trace of anger. With a thought, Chu Yang saw mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He fell into a crazy world, and his senses were completely drowned by the scarlet color of blood. But it only lasted for an instant before everything disappeared again. Shangguan Xiao said, "You can handle this. I'll try another method. You think too highly of yourself." Although Chu Yang was already drenched in cold sweat, his tone did not weaken at all. It wasn't a bluff. Although it seemed like he couldn't bear it in the beginning, he would definitely be able to bear it in the end. Shangguan Xiao didn't argue with Chu Yang. He pointed to the two young men and said, "Do you see them? One of them is called Shangguan Zhong, and the other is called Shangguan Yong. You want to make a comparison and then make me feel inferior." Chu Yang instantly understood Shangguan Xiao's meaning. Shangguan Xiao was not here, so it was better to understand his intentions. Shangguan Zhong is an orphan. When he was 9 years old, he was adopted by me. In 1 year, he cultivated from the primitive martial stage to the spirit stage. Chu Yang's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Reaching the spirit stage in 1 year meant that he was already at the spirit stage at the age of 10. However, Shangguan Xiao didn't care much about this and continued, "Although he is a genius, he doesn't have the arrogance of a genius." He joined the army at the age of 11 and participated in the War of the Two Worlds at the age of 12. After experiencing numerous life and death situations, he became a saint. In the end, he was promoted to a general at such a young age. He also has a great reputation in the army. Shangguan Yong was called trash when he was young and was abandoned by his parents. He participated in the War of the Two Worlds at the age of 9 and climbed out of the mountains of corpses time and time again. Every time his cultivation advanced, it was a life and death experience. Every step was difficult, and it was unimaginable for ordinary people. Chu Yang was shocked as he listened. It was indeed hard to imagine. Today, he is also an outstanding person among the younger generation in the army. No one would refuse to accept his name. His future is limitless. Both of them like Lan Lan, but they don't have any chance because they don't have the qualifications. Chapter 2182. The dagger was out in the open. Chu Yang faced Shangguan Xiao's oppressive gaze and sneered, "Go on. Do you think you can make me back off? This is the best result. It's good for you and good for her." Shangguan Xiao said bluntly, "Although you're not bad, compared to the others in Central State, you're still too far away. You can say it even more harshly." Chu Yang's words were sarcastic. Shangguan Xiao's face turned cold and he said coldly, "If you insist, there will be many people who won't like you. Because you're weak, you'll be looked down upon and humiliated. How will you deal with that? Will you let Lan Lan stand up for you?" Generally speaking, any man would be angered by such sarcasm. However, Shangguan Xiao found that Chu Yang was only sneering. "Aren't your methods too despicable? Do I look so weak? You want to crush my confidence with such a trivial method?" Chu Yang smiled and immediately looked at Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong. These two amazing people, the corners of his mouth curved into a contemptuous arc. He said to Shangguan Xiao, "Since you're using them as an example, then I'll also start from them. I don't mean to deny them, but they're just trash in front of me." What an arrogant tone. Shangguan Xiao's expression was even colder. Shangguan Yong and Shangguan Zhong were furious. Dang dang dang. The melodious sound of a bell rang, an emperor weapon. "What do you think?" Chu Yang sneered, "So what if they're saints? I've killed many saints. Do you have any objections if I say they're trash?" Shangguan Xiao couldn't help but be startled. Shangguan Yong and Shangguan Zhong were indeed extraordinary, but the young man in front of him seemed to be even more extraordinary. If he wanted to slaughter Shangguan Yong and Shangguan Zhong, it was really just a matter of raising his hand. As for the Central State geniuses you mentioned, what are they? I'll personally experience how stinky they are. I guarantee you'll see the answer, so please live a long life. Impudent. Shangguan Xiao could not help but be enraged. He suddenly snorted coldly, and Chu Yang seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices, and he completely collapsed to the ground. This is what you're capable of. Shangguan Xiao looked down at Chu Yang. I can tell you clearly that among those who are pursuing Lanlan, at least 3 of them are great emperors. Chu Yang's arrogance and sharpness were astonishing, and he was also very confident. Even when facing a great emperor like him, he could not say that such a person was bad. However, he had seen too many geniuses. It was just that there would always be geniuses among geniuses. Moreover, even if they were stunning geniuses, they would always end up dying young. Also, the young man in front of him was very arrogant now, but how long could he last? After being repeatedly struck by the cruel reality and being tempered to the point where they completely understood the gap between them, they would feel disheartened. At that time, he would be disheartened and give up, which would hurt Shangguan Lan even more. Therefore, it was better to end the pain quickly than to prolong the pain. Therefore, Shangguan Xiao did not show any mercy to Chu Yang, nor would he show any mercy. Ha ha! Chu Yang laughed heartily. His black eyes had a scornful look as he stared at Shangguan Xiao. Shangguan Xiao, although you're Lanlan's uncle and are qualified to test me, I'll tell you clearly that I'm not happy now. When the day comes that you have to kneel down and greet me, you'll know how wrong you are. Just you wait, I'll show you. Stubborn, I'll just kill you. Chapter 2183. Chu Yang's neck was choked by Shangguan Xiao, and he was lifted into the air like a chicken. After the initial struggle, he stopped moving. He retracted his tongue and let go of Shangguan Xiao's hands. His legs were hanging straight down, and he gave up struggling. He was like a dead man, like a piece of cured meat. He was still breathing with difficulty, but his face did not show any signs of pain. His black eyes were filled with mockery, contempt, and provocation. Whoosh, the wind suddenly became strong, but it could not blow away the frozen atmosphere. Everyone seemed to have been choked by the neck, and they were almost suffocating. Chu Fei looked at this scene and did not say anything, but his eyes were trembling. Jing Wuming and Sima Jian did not do anything, and they just watched quietly. They had no choice. Shangguan Xiao was a great emperor, and they could only rely on Chu Yang. This was not only Chu Yang's humiliation, but it was also an unforgettable humiliation for them. Shangguan Xiao's expression was cold. His hand that was choking Chu Yang's neck had blue veins popping out, but his great strength was restrained, and he did not use it on Chu Yang. Time seemed to have come to a standstill. Chu Yang didn't beg for mercy from beginning to end. His expression could be summarized in one sentence: "You dare to kill me?" Would Shangguan Xiao compromise in the face of such provocation? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Shangguan Xiao was a great emperor. How could he tolerate Chu Yang's provocation, and how could he compromise? In the end, everyone felt that there was only one outcome, and that was Chu Yang's death. Even so, Chu Yang did not seem to admit defeat. Do it. The sudden sarcastic voice shocked everyone. Then, a figure walked out from Chu Yang's body. Chu Yang's clone. He floated in the air with his arms crossed. He looked at Shangguan Xiao with ridicule and contempt. The frozen atmosphere was instantly broken. Chu Yang actually had a clone. This shocked many people. Shangguan Xiao was also shocked. Under his pressure, Chu Yang's clone could actually appear. Lanlan. Shangguan Xiao finally spoke. You're relying on this? If I kill you, Lanlan will definitely hate me, right? Do it. Chu Yang's doppelganger merely repeated this sentence. Everyone was shocked. Shangguan Xiao was a great emperor after all. How could he dare to provoke them again and again? Rock Saint. He might not have the ability to avenge you. Do it. An engagement. If I kill you, the Shangguan clan's reputation will be ruined, right? Do it. It was a psychological battle between Chu Yang and Shangguan Xiao. Every question that Shangguan Xiao asked was meant to break Chu Yang's psychological defense. If I kill you, Lanlan will hate me. Then let her hate me. Rock Saint doesn't have the ability to kill me. You have an engagement with Lanlan. If I kill you because of this, the Shangguan clan will inevitably be criticized. However, you are too naive. Who do you think you are? However, Shangguan Xiao didn't succeed every time. Chu Yang's response was only contempt and mockery. Everyone could see it clearly, and Shangguan Xiao naturally understood it as well. Chu Fei also understood. He was angry, anxious, and afraid, but he couldn't let himself show any cowardice. Rumble. The earth shook violently. Shangguan Xiao threw Chu Yang to the ground. Chu Yang's body was directly stuffed into a rat's hole. His entire body disappeared, leaving only a dark hole on the ground. Cough cough. Violent coughing sounds came from the pitch-black cave. Chu Fei, Jing Wuming, and Sima Jian let out a long sigh of relief. They survive. Chapter 2184. Sages are as common as dogs, and great emperors are everywhere. It seems that the so-called great emperors are not that rare. It seems that you are just a cheap one. It was not Chu Yang's doppelganger, but Chu Yang's original body. The voice came from the dark cave. When someone's consciousness reached in, they found Chu Yang lying down lazily, and the sneer on their face became thicker. Shangguan Xiao, you are nothing special as a great emperor. I will definitely return what you have given me today. Chu Yang was still provoking. Chu Fei, Jing Wuming, and Sima Jian Xin could not help but be on guard again. Dong. The earth trembled as if a drum had been struck. Everyone felt that the ground beneath their feet had sunk down by a layer. Shangguan Xiao, is this fun? If this is all you can do, you can continue. I am your grandson. Everyone really didn't know what Chu Yang was relying on. This was absolutely courting death. Shangguan Xiao was a great emperor, and should be respected. Is your ability only based on your glib tongue? Shangguan Xiao finally opened his mouth to speak, his face gloomy and cold. He was definitely angry, but he had not lost his mind. However, no one knew what he was thinking. Now, you can take it for granted. Chu Yang's voice came from the dark cave again. It seemed to be a little far away. I will remember this sentence and return it to you one day in the future. I wonder what kind of expression you will have when that time comes. I am looking forward to it. He was full of contempt, and his tone was somewhat sarcastic. Shangguan Xiao did not say anything, and did not move. Chu Fei, Jing Wuming, and Sima Jian Xin could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. Don't worry. Chu Yang's voice came again. In the future, when I deal with you, Lan Lan will not make things difficult for you. Because you will be willing to kneel in front of me like a dog and please me like a dog. Such rampant words made it hard for people to breathe. Fortunately, Shangguan Xiao did not move. To put it in a tacky way, if you look down on me now, I'll make it so that you won't be able to reach me in the future. Is this concise and comprehensive enough? As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Yang silently floated down from the ground. Like a ruffian, he sneered and provoked Shangguan Xiao. Kneel. Bang. Chu Yang was powerless to resist and could only kneel down. Kowtow. Bang bang bang. Chu Yang couldn't help but kowtow to Shangguan Xiao. His forehead was bleeding, and blood flowed down his face, dyeing his whole face red. However, it made his contemptuous expression even more moving. He was like a lonely hero who had fallen into a desperate situation, mocking the enemy's commander-in-chief. He would rather die than submit. Shangguan Xiao looked at Chu Yang like this, as if he was facing an enemy general. His expression was solemn and very calm, without a trace of anger. It seemed that he only had reason and the most rational judgment. I'll let you remember this even more deeply. Are you satisfied? Shangguan Xiao finally looked at Chu Yang with a sneer. I'll be waiting for you. The last sentence was more or less, let me see how much backbone you have and how much ability you have. Chu Yang felt the warm blood flowing down his face. Suddenly, he smiled brightly, revealing 8 white teeth. You won't be disappointed. Shangguan Xiao did not respond. He disappeared into thin air, without a trace of aura. There was no fluctuation, as if he had never appeared. Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong stared coldly at Chu Yang. They were about to say something, but a slap came over. Chu Yang's palm was stained with mud and blood. The palm lines were clear, and the knuckles were not long or short. It seemed to be the best length. Chapter 2185. Slap. The two were slapped heavily in the face. It was burning hot and painful. They were sent flying and fell to the ground, raising a large cloud of dust. Their resistance was like a piece of paper. They were immediately shocked and angry, but they were also extremely unwilling. If it wasn't for the Emperor artifact demonic bell, this dog was nothing. However, this was very powerless. This was also Chu Yang's strength. To be blunt, if you have the ability, go and get an Emperor artifact. 2 pieces of trash. Chu Yang sneered and ordered the two, kneel. You are delusional. I said kneel. Can you not kneel? With a bang, Chu Yang swung his hand. The bell rang melodiously, and the sound waves transformed into 2 large hands. Then, the 2 large hands grabbed Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong like how Shangguan Xiao grabbed Chu Yang's neck. 2 pieces of trash, kowtow. Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong resisted with all their might. However, the large hands formed by the sound waves directly grabbed their heads and smashed them to the ground. Bang! 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 The 2 of them kowtowed as much as Chu Yang had kowtowed. I will make your humiliation even more unforgettable. You can feel hatred and resentment. I hope that this humiliation and hatred can make you stronger. Then, you can come and find me for revenge. This was mostly what Shangguan Xiao said to Chu Yang. At this moment, Chu Yang made Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong feel the same way. Wild dog, I will definitely return today's humiliation 100-fold. I will definitely make you beg for death. Crack, crack. Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong's steely teeth were about to shatter. Their faces were distorted and completely malevolent. Their pair of tiger eyes were scarlet, revealing a heart-palpitating madness and endless hatred. I should have been like that just now. Chu Yang looked at the 2 people's scarlet eyes and distorted faces, and said indifferently, Shangguan Xiao's mood is probably the same as mine now. Just like how I believe that it's useless no matter how crazy the 2 of you are, that dog shit must also think that my efforts are all in vain and a joke in the end. As he spoke, he gritted his teeth and cursed in his heart, Shangguan Xiao, just you wait. Wild dog, just you wait. When Shangguan Yong and Shangguan Zhong gritted their teeth and said such a sentence, Chu Yang really felt the same way, so he looked at the 2 of them and couldn't help but smile. It seems that I won't be too lonely on such a path. Who was the lunatic? Shangguan Zhong and Shangguan Yong looked at Chu Yang's smiling face, and their pupils suddenly shrank slightly. Chu Yang was crazier than them. Then let's see who has more guts and more ability. The 2 of them were ruthless in their hearts. Without saying a word, they broke through the space with the 100-person team and left in a flash. The void slowly closed, and the spatial fluctuations slowly weakened. Finally, it completely calmed down and disappeared completely. The broken space was completely stabilized. This seemed to be a declaration that everything had come to an end today. Everything would slowly calm down, and also slowly disappear. The power of time would make everyone forget everything. Was it just possible? Today's matter was deeply imprinted in the hearts of everyone present. Perhaps when they were old, the scene would still be very clear when they recalled it, as if it had just happened yesterday. Chu Yang's actions today had shocked everyone. In everyone's mind, Chu Yang's madness, Chu Yang's pride, Chu Yang's stubbornness, Chu Yang's madness, and his smile, his blood-stained face, his unforgettable appearance. Chapter 2186. Following the departure of Shangguanzhong and Shangguanyong, the heavens and the earth once again regained its tranquility. The oppressive feeling that shrouded everyone's heart also disappeared completely. All the people who were affected by the purple chi from the east also secretly let out a long sigh of relief and felt a sense of relief. Chu Yang looked in the direction where Shangguan Zhong and the others had left. He stood there quietly and did not move for a long time. Everyone could not help but look at him, but no one dared to disturb him. As time went by, the crowd began to disperse. Life had to go on. Everyone had their own things to do. It was impossible to stop. Especially under the stimulation of what they had seen today, many people would be more motivated. Chu Yang stood there quietly for half an hour. Then, he lazily lay on the ground and looked up at the sky. Soon after, he closed his eyes. He felt a little tired. At this moment, he did not want to move at all. Master, do you know how dangerous it was just now? Bing Kuan's voice came out. At this time, he still had a lingering fear. Yes. Chu Yang responded faintly. It was indeed very dangerous. Shangguan Xiao killed him and he became a dead man. This was the worst result. No matter what Shangguan Xiao would suffer or bear, it would be irreversible. Master, can't you change your bad temper? Bing Kuan was really helpless. Would it kill him to endure it? In the past, Chu Yang did not take face and dignity seriously. He said that face could be eaten and dignity was not worth much. However, this time, he actually violated such a principle. It was simply a great shame in the world of shamelessness. I'm afraid it's difficult. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his laziness. He was like this. He ridiculed other people's self-esteem as a dangerous type of self-esteem. It was like a balloon that could cause a storm with a light poke. But wasn't he the same? Master, were you really confident just now? Bing Kuan was also very curious about this. In fact, he should be the first to ask this question. No. Chu Yang really did not have any confidence. What he had done before was indeed extremely dangerous. The Ice Kuan was speechless for a while. Finally, it realized that it was useless to say anything. It just said, Master, don't say anything. Hurry up and be invincible in the world and be as lonely as snow. After a pause, the Ice Kuan said again, Master, it's necessary to sing the song Lonely as Snow now. Chu Yang smiled. The Ice Kuan was becoming more and more like him. He really began to sing. Hearing the singing, Chu Fei, Jing Wuming, and Sima Jian relaxed and smiled. Chu Yang, this bastard, recovered really quickly. The three of them quickly arrived at Chu Yang's side. Chu Fei kicked Chu Yang and lectured, Little sheep, did you forget to bring your brain today? Putting aside the fact that Shangguan Xiao is a great emperor, he's still your sister-in-law's uncle. Is this how you handle conflicts? Blowing things up at the slightest provocation? The more Chu Fei spoke, the angrier he became. He kicked Chu Yang again and couldn't help but roar, Are you still a child? He's not a child, he's an idiot. Jing Wuming, the walking dead guy, couldn't help but show a disdainful look on his face. Although Sima Jian didn't say anything, he looked at Chu Yang as if he was looking at a fool. Chu Yang scratched his head. He had to admit that the way the extreme emperor handled things was very extreme. According to his conduct, he was giving up on Shangguan Lan's rhythm, or completely breaking with Shangguan Lan's family. At least, if he did so, it would be difficult for Shangguan Lan. Not to mention that he loved the house, he had to endure for the sake of his lover. He should also handle things in a more mature way, instead of making a mess of everything. Chapter 2187. This was the right way to open up, and it was also a sign of maturity. Only in this way could he win the respect and recognition of the other party. Chu Yang's previous choices and actions were extremely naive and ridiculous. He was an extreme person, and also a dangerous person. I really need to change. It's also time for me to grow up. Chu Yang thought to himself. If this was a test from Shangguan Lan's relatives and friends to Chu Yang, the answer he gave was not qualified, but he was sure of one thing, he was honest. Chu Yang completely exposed himself and told Shangguan Lan and Shangguan Lan's relatives and friends. He was such a person. It was up to them whether they could accept him or not. If they felt that it was not suitable, they could try to stop him. You do what you want, and I will do what I want. I want to see if you have the ability to stop me. Extremely rude. Of course, Chu Yang was not unaware of what Chu Fei and Jing Wuming said. He not only had a clear understanding of himself, but he also knew the consequences of doing so. There was another point that he was also very sure of. He was lazy, had low awareness, and his self-discipline was definitely not very good. Therefore, only by completely exposing his nature, with the supervision of others, and with the disdain and criticism of others, could he better change himself. It was easy to change mountains and rivers, but it was difficult to change one's nature. It was definitely not an easy thing to change oneself. The result of hiding one's nature was probably something that could not be changed for the rest of one's life. This required courage, daring to show one's naivety and ugliness in front of others. This was also a kind of determination, a determination to make a change. The few of you know astronomy and geography. You know the past 500 years and the future 1,000 years. I already know. Can you all shut up? Chu Yang was a little annoyed when he was lectured. After all, no one liked to be criticized. You're still in the right. Chu Fei was enraged. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to beat up Chu Yang. However, he didn't expect Chu Yang to flip out. He didn't even recognize his own brother and beat him up. He was also taught a lesson. Brother Chu Yang, you're a weakling. You're seriously affecting this marshal's image. Hurry up and let this marshal cultivate. Little sheep. Chu Fei was poked in his sore spot and couldn't help but roar. Go away, or else I'll beat you up again. Chu Yang smiled evilly. You weakling, you've seriously affected my image. Hurry up and cultivate. Jing Wuming suddenly blurted out such a sentence in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang was instantly provoked. Jing Wuming, you piece of shit. If I were your age, I would be able to make you feel so inferior that you would want to slit your own throat. Bullshit. What's so great about a sage? In any case, I'm better than you. Dang. 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 Chu Yang was furious. He directly used the demonic bell to teach Jing Wuming a lesson. Then, he ruthlessly suppressed him. Seeing Chu Fei and Jing Wuming's fate, Sima Jian wisely shut up and didn't say a word. Chu Yang, this bastard, was very unscrupulous. If he could beat up his own brother, he could definitely beat up his own elders. He still wanted some face. He didn't want to be suppressed by Chu Yang using the demonic bell and then be beaten up. When the demonic bell was activated, of course, many people rushed over. When they saw the scene of Chu Yang suppressing Chu Fei and Jing Wuming, they were a little dumbfounded. What's going on? Wasn't Chu Yang just a moment ago? How come he's suddenly making a ruckus? He's giggling happily. When Chu Yang left, Chu Fei, with two panda eyes, praised Sima Jian. Senior is brilliant. You completely saw through that little bastard's nature. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.